Chapter 618. In the end, the decision of the other folk. In the end, they still disappointed Feng Zichen. With the support of the Seven Stars continent and all the other races, the other folk gradually expanded, so much so that they started to have thoughts that they shouldn't have. They wanted to pull Shen Yuan down from the throne. As soon as this thought appeared, it grew uncontrollably. Soon, it completely occupied the hearts of the other folk, and they started to take action. How did the Empress Princess disappear? Did Shen Yuan do it on purpose? In order to understand his competitors, he set up the Empress Princess. The rumor that had been buried for a long time started to spread again in the great desolate world under the intentional propaganda of the variant humans. In an instant, rumors about Shen Yuan spread throughout all the races. The other folk used this as an excuse to force Shen Yuan to give an explanation. Otherwise, they would refuse to recognize Xuanyuan's legal status and not respect him as the emperor. In response, Xuanyuan's side was naturally furious, but the pure-blooded didn't want to fall out with him. Therefore, they first gave an explanation and used Shenong's words as evidence. Unfortunately, no matter how they explained, the other folk wouldn't listen. That's right, the other folk only wanted a reason to target Shen Yuan so that they could have a good reason to attack and make their next move easier. In this way, why would they care about whether this matter was true or not? To them, in order to achieve their secret, even if the Empress Princess really appeared in front of everyone, the other folk would say that it was fake. It was used by Shen Yuan to confuse the world. After the explanation failed, Xuanyuan's side understood the other party's intentions. They were clearly trying to usurp the throne. Could be said that everyone knew what they were thinking. Knowing that the other party was determined to rebel, Shen Yuan didn't hold back. He immediately mobilized the army to destroy the other party's forces that had yet to form. However, Xuanyuan's actions were still too slow. No, to be precise, Shen Yuan underestimated the determination of the other folk. In order to seize power, the other folk directly joined forces with all the other races. When Shen Yuan attacked the other folk, the ones who stopped him were not the experts of the other folk, but the experts of all the other races. It was the battle with the masters of the 10,000 races that took up too much of Xuanyuan's time. As a result, he wasn't able to take action immediately and destroy the forces of the mutants. Otherwise, how could the mutants resist Shen Yuan, who was blessed with the fortune of the human race? They would be easily destroyed by Shen Yuan. Unfortunately, with the intervention of the experts of the 10,000 races, everything changed. Xuanyuan's advantage was completely gone. This delay gave Qi Yu time to prepare. He directly integrated all the inhuman forces and established the Jili tribe to fight against Shen Yuan Yaoyao. The Jili division was completed. The human race's providence was immediately split into two. Almost half of the human fate flew out of Xuanyuan's body and into Qiu's. As a result, Xuanyuan's strength dropped drastically. At the same time, Qiu's strength skyrocketed, reaching a level where he could rival Shen Yuan. In the situation, the tables were turned in an instant. The masters of the 10,000 clans helped. Although they managed to stop Shen Yuan, their actions undoubtedly angered the masters of the human clan. As a result, some of the neutral forces completely sided with Shen Yuan and worked together to deal with the Jili tribe. There were also some human experts who had been living in seclusion. After learning about this, they all came out of seclusion to help Shen Yuan. Joining forces with the 10,000 races caused the Jili tribe to gradually become the enemy of the human clan. At this moment, some of the leaders of the mutants also realized that they had done something stupid. However, since things had already come to this, they had no way back. They could only brace themselves and continue forward. Defeating Shen Yuan was the only way for them to turn the situation around. History books were often written by the victors. As long as they defeated Shen Yuan and obtained the supreme power of the human clan, wouldn't they be able to rewrite the merits and demerits? With this thought, the fighting spirit of the mutants became even stronger. As for Xuanyuan's side, because the Jili tribe had joined forces with the 10,000 races, they viewed them as traitors. They hated them to the bone and wanted to kill them as soon as possible. As a result, the civil war of the human clan broke out. This was an unfair war. From the beginning, this war was destined to be unfair. On Xuanyuan's side, Only the pure-blooded humans supported him. As for the Jili tribe, other than the mutants, they also had the support of the 10,000 races. In fact, there was even a faint shadow of the Magi in the Jili tribe. One side was weak and the other side had more people. The result was self-evident. On the other hand, Xuanyuan's side was being beaten back. It was also at this moment that Xuanyuan's reinforcements were finally about to enter the arena. The 12 golden immortals of Chan School had arrived. According to the agreement that everyone had made in the Purple Cloud Palace back then, the candidates for the 3 emperors and 5 emperors were decided by the human race. The candidates for the imperial preceptor were from the 3 sections. In order to show his importance to the 3 emperors, the Grand Pure One descended to the mortal world and personally taught Fuxi. Originally, after this, they should be disciples of Chan School of Jie School. They taught the 2 generations of human emperors respectively. However, under Feng Zichen's secret drive, the authority of the 3 emperors was strengthened and their status became higher. As a result, no one among the disciples of Jie School and Chan School was qualified to take in 2 human emperors as disciples. Arranging for disciples to become the imperial preceptor was to seek merit for them, not to send them to their deaths. Their fate was not strong enough, but they could not become the imperial preceptor. They would be devoured by the imperial purple qi and die. Therefore, the 3 sects could not find a candidate for the imperial preceptor. At that time, the 3 pure ones could not return to the primordial world because they were resisting the chaos fiend god. Otherwise, they would be qualified to take in the human emperor as their disciple. Helpless, the 3 pure ones had no choice but to change their strategy. They changed from taking in disciples to guiding them, just like how Xian Qing guided Shinnong. In that case, although they did not have as much merit as becoming the imperial preceptor, it was better than nothing. The 12 golden immortals of Chan School came for merit. Putting aside the strength of the 12 disciples of the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, the Dharma treasures on them were good. Therefore, with the help of the 12 golden immortals and the power of their connate numinous treasures, Xuanyuan's side gradually gained the upper hand. However, the good times did not last long. Seeing that the situation had reversed, Qi Yu made up his mind and invited a large number of experts from the Magi to suppress the 12 golden immortals. Just like that, the 2 sides exchanged blows and the battlefield gradually fell into a stalemate. It was also at this moment that the hidden forces finally made their move. They pretended to be experts of the myriad races and suddenly attacked the 12 golden immortals, severely injuring them. The 12 golden immortals were severely injured and completely lost their combat strength. As a result, the strength of Xuanyuan's side was greatly reduced. Qi Yu took the opportunity to launch an attack. He broke through the front line in one fell swoop and advanced into the hinterland of the human race. For a moment, Xuanyuan's side was in danger. However, the changes in things were often not as they wished. Because of the heavy injuries of the 12 golden immortals, a hidden big shot of Chan School, the deputy sect master of Chan School, the ancient Taoist Randeng. He was a big shot in the sage-to-be realm. Since others bullied the weak and dealt with the 12 golden immortals, Taoist Randeng naturally had to find a way to get back at them. As the sage-to-be entered the scene, the situation changed again. Qi Yu's side gradually fell into a disadvantage. The words sage-to-be represented everything. This was the top combat strength of the primordial world, enough to turn the situation around. If nothing went wrong, Shenyuan and Taoist Randeng would join forces and soon calm the internal strife of the human race. However, the person behind the scenes obviously did not want the battle to end just like that. Therefore, an unknown sage-to-be expert walked out and stalled Taoist Randeng, buying some time for Qi Yu's side to catch their breath. Interesting. It's getting more and more interesting. Since that's the case, let me add fuel to the fire. Let's see what tricks you can play. On Ziwei Star, Feng Zichen saw that the situation of the battle was showing signs of expanding. Instead of stopping it, he secretly added fuel to the fire. With a thought, Feng Zichen issued a decree. Immediately, dozens of powerful auras erupted from the 5 connate races and rushed towards the ancestral land of the human race to support them. This was another ambush of Feng Zichen. Back then, seeing that the human race was no match for the demon race and was in danger of being exterminated, Feng Zichen immediately made a decision to send some of the humans into the 5 Khanate races to preserve a trace of the human race's bloodline. These humans were secretly nurtured by the 5 Khanate races to be the hidden foundation of the human race. However, the situation was critical now, so they had no choice but to appear in advance to reverse the situation. With these humans taking action, the 5 Khanate races would not sit idly by. They hurriedly sent some experts to follow them. With this help, the strength of Xuanyuan's side became stronger and stronger. However, Qi Yu's side also received strong reinforcements. Under the pressure, the 10,000 races had no choice but to use their own foundation to fight against Xuanyuan's side. At the same time, the power behind the scenes was also secretly involving the energy of Xuanyuan's side. But do you think that's the end? Seeing that this place was so lively, some people who had ulterior motives secretly joined in. For example, the demon sect. They provoked the various forces and forced them to join in the civil war of the human race, causing the range of the war to become wider and wider. Some ancient demon gods were unwilling to be left out. Under the persuasion of the demon sect, they joined the war. In order to help Qi Yu, the witch race was also dragged into the war. The forces in the sky did not dare to be left out. They sent people to the lower realm in an attempt to seek some merit. Chaos. It was all chaos. Now, the Shen sect, the demon sect, the witch race, the heavenly court, the 5 Khanate races, the ancient demon race, and so on, all the major forces of the primordial world had joined in the war, causing the situation to become more and more complicated. Before this, who would have thought that a mere civil war of the human race would evolve into a showdown between the major forces of the primordial world? It would be strange if no one was secretly controlling it. Oh! At this moment, almost all the great divinities, their gazes were focused on the human race. They nervously stared at the changes in the situation. They were afraid. This war had affected too many forces and experts. If it was not handled well, it would turn into a disaster that affected the entire primordial world. Therefore, they had to keep an eye on this war at all times to control the impact of the war within a certain range. The primordial world could not withstand the torment. The situation has developed to this point. The person behind the scenes should not be able to hold back and make a move. Let me see what your purpose is in provoking the great calamity of the primordial world. Apart from the crowd, Feng Zichen was also paying attention to the situation. He was waiting for the person behind the scenes to make a move. If he did not make a move, he would not have the chance to make a move when the outcome was decided. Boom! Just as Feng Zichen was waiting for the mastermind behind the scenes, a sudden change occurred in the field. 2 terrifying figures suddenly appeared in the void and charged towards Shen Yuan and Qi Yu at the same time. Judging from their cultivation, they had already stepped into the half-primordial chaos realm. Seeing this on the Emperor Star, Feng Zichen was about to save them. However, just as he was about to make a move, 4 mysterious figures suddenly appeared outside the boundless starry sky and charged towards the depths of the starry sky. Their targets. They were the 4 great ferocious beasts that had been sealed. Obviously, they had come to save the 4 great ferocious beasts. Fellow Taoists, it's been a long time. Retracting his hand that was about to save them, Feng Zichen smiled at the 4 people who were rushing over. These 4 people were not strangers. They were 4 of the 9 chaos demon gods that had fought against the incarnations of the saints back then. Feng Zichen had fought with them before, so he was naturally no stranger to them. In the face of Feng Zichen's greeting, the 4 chaos demon gods were all silent. They just quickly used their supernatural powers to try to save the 4 great ferocious beasts. Fighting 1 against 4, Feng Zichen did not dare to be careless. He carefully manipulated Pangu's divine power to deal with the 4 of them. At the same time, he also quietly released a trace of his mind to pay attention to the changes in the human battlefield. If they had the complete fate of the human race, Shen Yuan and Qi Yu would not be afraid of the sneak attack of the 2 half-primordial chaos existences. Unfortunately, they only had half of the fate of the human race. Therefore, under the sneak attack of the 2, although Shen Yuan and Qi Yu did not die, they were seriously injured. After failing their attack, the 2 did not stop. Instead, They used their supernatural powers and continued to charge forward. Another attack could kill Shen Yuan and Qi Yu on the spot. However, they did not have the chance. Seeing that the two of them were in danger, Fuxi and Shenong attacked at the same time. Each of them blocked an assassin and fought with them. It was also because the fate of the human race had not reached its peak. Otherwise, Fuxi and Shenong would definitely be able to unleash the combat strength of the primordial chaos realm and easily suppress the two of them. They would not be trapped in a bitter battle like they were now. "You're courting death." The powerful beings who were watching the battle were shocked and angry when they saw that someone dared to make a move under their noses. Almost without hesitation, they grabbed at the two people who were fighting with Shenong and Fuxi. "Fellow Taoists, please stop." Suddenly, a clear voice came from the void. It was like the sound of the Tao was trembling slightly. It deduced endless magical methods and shattered everyone's supernatural powers. Who is it? While everyone was puzzled, dozens of familiar and unfamiliar figures appeared in front of everyone. It was familiar. It was the Tao that everyone had heard somewhere. It was unfamiliar. It was the other party's expression. It was completely different from what they remembered. It was as if he was a different person. For them who had experienced the possession of the chaos demon gods, they naturally knew what this meant. Chapter 6:19. They had been possessed by the chaos fiend god. Endless years of bitter cultivation had turned into a wedding dress for them overnight. It was really sad. Fellow Taoists, let the poor Wei and the others release you. Without any superfluous words, the two forces engaged in the most intense life-and-death battle as soon as they met. Their fellow Taoists who had cultivated with them in the past could not even rest in peace after death. Their identities and bodies were replaced by the chaos fiend god, causing chaos in the untainted land. How could this group of great mediums tolerate it? In this battle, they did not seek to kill the chaos fiend god. At the very least, they wanted to destroy their bodies to release their former fellow Taoists. Rumble. With the entrance of the chaos fiend god and the great mediums, the scale of the battle became even greater. Terrifying power raged out, almost destroying everything. The void shattered layer by layer, and time was distorted. Even the rules of heaven and earth were collapsing one after another. The entire untainted land seemed to have fallen into the end of the world. An endless amount of destructive power gushed out from it. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Just as heaven and earth were about to sink, at the critical moment, the 12 shrines sitting on the untainted land suddenly trembled violently and emitted a bright light. Roar, 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 roar. 12 towering figures walked out of the 12 shrines and stood on the untainted land. They emitted endless majesty and jointly suppressed the untainted land. 12. Capital Heaven Divine Killing Formation. Rise! An ancient and mysterious Tao sound came slowly, as if it had crossed endless years and resounded in the untainted land. It lingered in everyone's ears for a long time. The 12 Capital Heaven Divine Killing Formation, which shocked the untainted land, finally appeared again. Sensing that the untainted land was in great danger, almost instinctively, the shadows of the ancestral sorcerers in the 12 shrines operated spontaneously and joined forces to set up the top Khanate formation of the untainted land, the 12 Capital Heaven Divine Killing Formation. Rumble. Under the power of the formation, the shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerers slowly merged and gradually formed a great and sacred existence. The incarnation of Pangu. Without a doubt, this was the incarnation of Pangu at the primordial chaos level. A vast aura spread out, faintly resonating with heaven and earth. An inexplicable power appeared, making the rules of heaven and earth more active. Even the terrifying fluctuations raging in the untainted land were slightly restrained. Bang! As soon as Pangu's incarnation appeared in the world, he did not do anything. In the netherworld realm, the prehistoric geomancy map automatically recovered, broke through the void, crossed the realm, and flew into the hands of Pangu's incarnation. Suppress. Grabbing the prehistorical geomancy map, Pangu's incarnation shook and unfolded it. Immediately, An extremely vast and profound power surged out from the great desolate geomancy map. It whistled into the ground and turned into a hazy film of light, protecting the ground firmly. Rumble. After that, no matter how powerful and terrifying the shockwaves from the battle were, they were unable to shake the great desolate land in the slightest. It was also thanks to Feng Zichen's timely establishment of the 12 shrines. Otherwise, after this battle, no matter who won or lost, it would cause great damage to the untainted land. It was comparable to the apocalypse. After Feng Zichen's efforts, the changes in the Eldritch World line were getting bigger and bigger. Originally, according to the normal course of history, the battle between the liches and demons should be the largest battle in the history of the untainted land. However, as Feng Zichen continued to cause trouble, everything changed. After the battle between the liches and demons, the calamity of the Chaos Fiend God broke out first, followed by the calamity of the Khanate Ferocious Beasts, and then the calamity of the demon sect. Finally, the demon ancestor Rahu took action to cause chaos in the untainted land. The scale of each battle was larger and larger, and the range of experts involved was also increasing. First, it was a chaotic battle between half-step primordial chaos experts, and then it developed into a fierce battle between existences at the level of primordial chaos Dalio-Jinxian. In the end, it evolved into dozens of existences with the combat strength of primordial chaos, engaging in a life-and-death battle. It was really exciting. Right now, another battle that was not inferior to the scale of the battle between the liches and demons was taking place in the untainted land. Boom! 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 Legendary existences fought in the depths of the void. Terrifying fluctuations erupted one after another, shaking the past, present, and future. As a result, the universe was out of order, and the heaven and earth were out of balance. Strange and unpredictable scenes appeared one after another in the untainted land, which was extremely shocking. The heaven and earth were bright and dim, and the laws were looming. Terrifying fluctuations spread between the heaven and earth, oppressing the minds of all living beings. It was unknown how much pressure it brought to them. If it were not for Pangu's incarnation doing its best to suppress the untainted land, preventing the land from sinking in the battle, it was unknown how many innocent creatures would have been affected by this battle and turned into ashes. As time passed, the battle gradually entered a white-hot state. Both sides could no longer control their strength, so all kinds of magical powers flew around. Even the heaven realm and the boundless starry sky were affected. Under such circumstances, Feng Zichen, who was beating the 4 chaos demon gods in the boundless starry sky, had to divert part of his strength to protect the heaven realm. The heaven realm had now become the center of the untainted land, and he could not let it be destroyed in this battle. However, diverting part of his strength to protect the heaven realm was also a kind of pressure for Feng Zichen. He was not the only one who had not fully recovered from the injuries left by the battle with the demon ancestor Rahu. Even the Zhoxing map and the small Mount Buzhou had not recovered. In addition, the 4 ferocious beasts were suppressed in the boundless starry sky, which also greatly dispersed the power of the god Pangu. Therefore, the power of the god Pangu was greatly weakened by the continuous dispersal of the power of the god in the boundless starry sky. As a result, when Feng Zichen faced the 4 chaos demon gods, he did not have an overwhelming advantage and could only barely maintain his undefeated position, with a trace of strength left to support other battlefields. At this point, if there was no power to break the balance, then both sides would be in a stalemate. At this time, it was completely a battle of attrition to see who could hold on first. The one who could not hold on first would be the loser. Right when the battle was in full swing, at the center of the untainted land and right below the heaven realm, the ruins of Mount Buzhou and the current location of the World Tree had suddenly welcomed an unexpected guest. This person's figure was blurry, and his entire body was coiled by a thin layer of chaotic energy, causing others to be unable to see his appearance clearly. Obviously, he'd put on a disguise to conceal his true origins. No one knew his name, his origins, or what sort of ability he'd utilized to actually allow him to stroll through the surroundings of the World Tree and the Last Days domain that the Heaven Dao had personally set up, and he wasn't affected in the slightest. TSK. This obviously showed that the ability of the Heaven Dao was truly capable. The last day's domain that it set up was really something that no one could stop. How many waves has it been? All those years ago, the experts of the demon sect came and went as they pleased. Now, it seemed like this unknown existence was the same. The last day's domain hadn't been of any use at all, and it seemed as if it didn't exist in the eyes of these experts. It was truly dangerous for him to protect the World Tree. The World Tree was so beautiful that everyone that saw it couldn't help but exclaim with admiration towards its greatness. They were unable to figure out how such a perfect life could exist in the world, and it was simply like a miracle. This was something that even this unknown existence was no exception to. Alas! This is the World Tree. What a shocking existence. He lightly stroked the striations on the World Tree as if he was stroking the most precious piece of art in the world, and he sighed with slight reluctance. Reluctance? There was no doubt about it. Based on this person's tone, it was obvious that he'd specially come here for the sake of harming the World Tree. What a pity! Such a great life is about to be destroyed at the hands of the poor way. If you want to blame someone, then blame yourself for being related to the safety of the untainted land. If you want to destroy the untainted land and establish the earth, fire, water, and wind once more, then you're your greatest weakness. So long as you're destroyed, then the heavens and the earth would be out of balance and combine once more. At that time, it would be the fortuitous encounter of the poor way. Looking at the World Tree, that person muttered to himself. Judging from his expression, he seemed to be explaining the reason for his actions to the World Tree, and also seemed to be convincing himself to make the final decision. Perhaps it was these mutterings that strengthened that person's determination. After he finished speaking, there was no longer any hesitation in his eyes. He took out a long black saber with determination and raised it towards the roots of the World Tree, ready to strike at any time. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As if sensing danger, the World Tree suddenly trembled violently, and its entire body lit up with clear light. Countless mysterious runes kept flowing on its body. Whoosh! The World Tree swayed gently, sprinkling down endless clear light. Together with the mysterious runes on the tree, it formed a green light screen around it, firmly protecting itself. This green light screen emitted an extremely rich aura of life, and mysterious and complicated runes loomed on it, showing its profundity. Whoosh! Whoosh! Invisible waves emanated from the World Tree, calming everything around it. Primordial chaos Daluojinxian. The level of the World Tree had long reached the level of primordial chaos Daluojinxian. Although the World Tree couldn't exert all its power because it was holding up the sky, primordial chaos was primordial chaos, and it had the power to transcend everything. Now that the World Tree had used all its strength to form the light screen, it definitely belonged to the primordial chaos level, and it had the power to contend with primordial chaos Daluojinxian. Primordial chaos? What an enviable life! It's still underage, but it has the power of primordial chaos. If it reaches adulthood, what will happen? No wonder it's in existence at the same level as the Chaos Demon God. It's really terrifying. Sensing the waves emanating from the World Tree, that person's expression couldn't help but become solemn. He unconsciously clenched the black saber in his hand and sighed at the World Tree. However, although he was solemn, the means shown by the World Tree obviously couldn't scare him. Since he had come here, he was naturally prepared. The situation in front of him was within his expectations, and he had already prepared for it. It would be really surprising if the World Tree didn't resist. What a pity! If you were in a free state with my ability, I would definitely not be your match. But now, you're burdened by heaven and earth, and you can't exert even 1/10,000th of your strength. How can you resist me, whose strength has greatly increased? Looking at the World Tree with slight pity, that person suddenly raised the black saber in his hand, raised it high above his head with both hands, and activated his power with all his strength. Rumble! An aura unique to a primordial treasure slowly emanated from the black saber in his hand. That black saber was a primordial treasure. No, to be precise, it was a broken chaos spiritual treasure. However, the level of this chaos spiritual treasure should have been very high before it was broken. So even if it was broken, it still had the power of a primordial treasure. Chi. A ray of strange black light lit up from the tip of the saber, and then spread to the entire saber. As if it was surrounded by black flames, the black saber burned, and a huge amount of heat radiated, distorting the air. Kill. When the power of the black saber had accumulated to the maximum, that person waved the saber in his hand, about to slash at the world tree. Rumble. The saber didn't move, but the momentum arrived first. A solemn, murderous aura swept out, creating layers of ripples in the void, as if it wanted to destroy everything. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The invisible saber momentum burst out and hit the cyan light curtain around the world tree, creating layers of ripples and distorting it, as if it was about to collapse. Too powerful. Just the saber momentum alone was enough to make the cyan light curtain, which could withstand the attack of a primordial chaos expert, show signs of collapse. If the black saber really slashed down, the cyan light curtain wouldn't be able to withstand it. But now the saints were far away in the sky. The great divinities were besieging the chaos demon gods. Feng Zichen was also being held back by the 4 chaos demon gods. At this moment, all the beings who could rescue the world tree were tied up and couldn't come to help. For a moment, the world tree was in danger. Break! The man made up his mind and waved the black saber in his hand. Suddenly, endless saber momentum burst out, turning into countless pitch-black saber lights, shattering the cyan light curtain around the world tree. This is the end of your tricks. So, destroy. After breaking the cyan light curtain, the man didn't stop at all. He held the black saber tightly with both hands, raised it above his head, and was about to swing it down again to completely cut off the world tree's life force. Fellow Taoist, please stop. However, at this moment, a clear voice suddenly came from the side, interrupting his actions. Who is it? When the man heard the words, he looked over and saw an otherworldly figure slowly walking out of the void and coming to stand in front of him. Boom! Boundless majesty burst out from the newcomer's body. It was supreme and domineering, with the power to sweep away everything. In an instant, it shattered the sharp saber momentum all over the sky. The world tree is very important. I can't let you destroy it just like that, the newcomer said leisurely as he wiped away the opponent's momentum. Ziwei Emperor Qi. It's you. Why are you here? Chapter 620. After recognizing the identity of the person, the mysterious man could not hide the astonishment on his face, because it was impossible for the person to appear here. The leader of the 4 imperial gods, Emperor Zhongtian Ziwei Polaris Supreme Yellow. Why can't it be me? Seeing the other party's expression, Feng Zichen said with some amusement. No! Weren't you held back by the chaos demon god and unable to escape in the boundless starry sky? Why did you suddenly appear here? Forget it. That's not important. Anyway, you alone can't stop the poor Wei. After seeing Feng Zichen appear, the man was puzzled at first and seemed to be greatly shocked. But soon after, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly relaxed. He said with a nonchalant expression, Fellow Taoist, you're really confident. You and I are both half-step primordial chaos. Fellow Taoist, are you so confident that you can firmly suppress me? Hearing the other party say this, Feng Zichen could not help but be a little amused. He was the 4 imperial gods. Although his realm was the same as the other parties, which was the peak of the sage-to-be half-step primordial chaos. But his combat strength, with the support of the karmic position of heaven and earth, could reach the 3rd heaven of primordial chaos or even stronger. In this way, how could the other party, a half-step primordial chaos, be his opponent even if he had a connate cardinal treasure in hand? Therefore, in Feng Zichen's opinion, the other party's words were simply ridiculous. Fellow Taoist Ziwei, although I don't know what means you used to come here, poor Wei, but I'm sure you must have paid a great price to come here. After all, there are still 4 primordial chaos demon gods in the boundless starry sky. Dealing with them must have taken a lot of your energy. I just don't know how much strength fellow Taoist Ziwei can exert in this state. What's more, you were all seriously injured when you fought demon ancestor Rahu that day. Now, I'm afraid you haven't recovered yet, right? At this moment, the mysterious man seemed fearless. He was not afraid of Feng Zichen. In his heart, he had already determined that Feng Zichen's strength was far from his peak level. Not to mention the mysterious man. No one would think that Feng Zichen could exert all his strength in this state. Just as the mysterious man had said, the boundless starry sky was being attacked by the chaos demon god. Feng Zichen must have put all his energy there to prevent the 4 ferocious beasts from breaking out of the seal. The consequence of this was that Feng Zichen, who appeared here, would not be able to display his strength at his normal level. It would already be considered good if he could reach even 1/10,000th of his prime. After all, they were 4 chaos demon gods at the primordial chaos level, not 4 cabbages that could be found on the roadside. If he wanted to stop them, he would have to pay an unimaginable price. Moreover, he was still injured. Because of this, even though the mysterious man knew that Feng Zichen's strength was comparable to a primordial chaos expert, he still spoke arrogantly and did not take him seriously at all. He felt that the Feng Zichen in front of him was just an illusory body and did not have the strength to compete with him at all. But was the truth really as he thought? Oh? Is that really so? Since you think so, why don't you come forward and verify it yourself? You should know that you have to pay the price for looking down on me. Feng Zichen smiled gently and did not take the mysterious man's words seriously at all. He just invited him to verify it himself. He wanted to see if his strength was, as he thought, weak. Of course, he did not care. After all, the one who appeared here was Feng Zichen's real body. The real body. The one who stayed in the boundless starry sky was his incarnation. As early as when he found that someone was deliberately stirring up trouble in the untainted land, Feng Zichen knew that something was wrong. Someone wanted to start a catastrophe in the untainted land. After realizing this, although Feng Zichen did not know the purpose of the other party, he was very sure of one thing. If they wanted to destroy the untainted land, they were destined to have to go through the Tree of World. Therefore, after leaving an incarnation, Feng Zichen quietly left the boundless starry sky and hid inside the Tree of World. What happened later all confirmed Feng Zichen's guess. With the outbreak of a large-scale chaotic battle, the person behind the scenes came here and wanted to harm the Tree of World. That was why the current scene was happening. As for why the incarnation that was fighting with the 4 chaos demon gods in the boundless starry sky was so strong, of course, it was because of the power of the god Pangu. It was also because of this that Feng Zichen's performance in the boundless starry sky was so terrible. After all, his real body was not there. That's what I was thinking. The mysterious man did not talk nonsense. He waved the black long knife in his hand and slashed at Feng Zichen. Swoosh! The black saber radiance surged out, overbearing and carrying a majestic saber momentum. It was as if countless mountains were pressing down on Feng Zichen. Good knife technique. After praising in his heart, Feng Zichen used his fingers as a sword and pointed at the oncoming knife radiance. In an instant, endless brilliance erupted and countless stars evolved, forming a vast starry sky in front of Feng Zichen. It was extremely gorgeous. Rumble. The knife radiance was against the sword radiance. Terrifying power erupted and tore everything apart. Endless knife momentum and sword intent burst out in the void, constantly colliding and destroying each other. Everything was blurred and destroyed. Heaven and earth were vast, drowned by the sword intent and knife momentum. After a long time, the storm gradually subsided and the winner was decided. But how is this possible? How can you be so strong? After the blow, the Tau momentum was not as good as the sword intent. The mysterious man's figure holding the knife flew backward, his eyes full of disbelief. It shouldn't be. Why? Clearly, most of your strength is concentrated in the boundless starry sky to resist the 4 chaos demon gods. But why do you still have such powerful strength? Using the knife to support his injured body, the mysterious man could not believe the facts in front of him and muttered absent-mindedly. He was injured, under the other party's casual blow. His full-strength blow was no match for the other party's casual blow. This undoubtedly meant that the other party was not in a weakened state as he had imagined. On the contrary, the other party was very strong. Judging from the fact that he could easily injure him, the other party's strength was not inferior to an ordinary primordial chaos expert. Sigh. Poor thing. What are the four emperors? The supreme beings between heaven and earth, the embodiment of the will of the primitive world. They manage the primitive world on behalf of the heavenly Tao and have supreme power and strength. Even the real primordial chaos Dalio Jinxian would not dare to say that he could defeat the four emperors in the primitive world, let alone you who have not become primordial chaos Dalio Jinxian. On the opposite side, Feng Zichen sighed with pity and said to the mysterious man, overconfident. He was talking about the other party. Defeating the other party with one blow was nothing to him. It was a normal thing. After all, he had the strength of primordial chaos Dalio Jinxian. And the other party was only an ant at the half-step primordial chaos level. If it were not for the innate treasure in his hand, he would have been seriously injured by that blow. He would not have had the chance to talk to Feng Zichen. Primordial chaos Dalio Jinxian? Poor Wei was careless. I didn't expect that fellow Taoist's trump card was much more than poor Wei imagined. Even in the face of four primordial chaos demon gods, you still have the strength to defeat poor Wei. With a bitter smile, the mysterious man said with difficulty. He had miscalculated, but it was not his fault. Who would have thought that great Emperor Ziwei was so powerful that he still had the strength of primordial chaos Dalio Jinxian while facing four primordial chaos Dalio Jinxian? He was ridiculously strong. Fellow Taoist, now that things have come to this, can you tell me where you came from? After sealing the surrounding space and completely blocking the escape route of the mysterious man, Feng Zichen walked forward and asked softly. He was really curious. These days, even primordial chaos demon gods and demon sects had given up on destroying the untainted world. The mysterious man who suddenly appeared in front of him did not seem to be a primordial chaos demon god. Instead, he was Gao Zhen of Shenmen. Why would he have the idea of destroying the untainted world? To be honest, fellow Taoist's aura is extremely pure. It doesn't seem like you have been possessed by a primordial chaos demon god. Why would you suddenly have such a rebellious idea of destroying the untainted world? Fellow Taoist, aren't you ashamed of the teachings of the Tao ancestor? In front of the mysterious man, Feng Zichen asked curiously. Haha, what do you know? Poor Wei wants to destroy the untainted world. Naturally, she wants to create an opportunity for poor Wei. With a sad smile, the mysterious man said in a low voice, back then, when the untainted world was just formed, 9 Hongmeng purple qi were born between heaven and earth. 7 of them were obtained by the Tao ancestor and became the 7 saints today. As for the remaining 2 Hongmeng purple qi, one of them escaped from the world and completely disappeared. The other one blended into the untainted world to become the foundation of heaven and earth. Poor Wei said so. I think you should understand what I mean. As if he had completely given up hope, the mysterious man frankly stated his purpose. Hiss. Fellow Taoist, what a good idea. After listening to the mysterious man's explanation, Feng Zichen could not help but secretly click his tongue. Destroying the untainted world to extract the Hongmeng purple qi. How should he describe this method? There was really a slight possibility of becoming a saint. Destroying the untainted world, although there was a great karma and great karma, once one became a saint, all of this would not be a problem. Saints were immortal and indestructible. It was not a joke. Even if one carried an enormous amount of karma and great karma, it could be slowly repaid. After all, saints had plenty of time. However, this wasn't the reason for the mysterious man to destroy the untainted world, nor was it the reason for the mysterious man to join forces with the Chaos Fiend God. Right? That's right. That mysterious man. He had absolutely joined forces with the Chaos Fiend God. Otherwise, how could it be such a coincidence? Just when he wanted to destroy the untainted world, a large group of Chaos Fiend Gods appeared and helped him restrain the energy of the experts. All of this, there was absolutely a Chaos Fiend God that was interfering. Come. Let me see who you are. Feng Zichen stretched out his hand and grabbed towards the mysterious man. He intended to tear apart the mysterious man's disguise and see his true appearance. A layer of faint, chaotic energy coiled around the mysterious man. It was this layer of chaotic energy that isolated him from everything, causing him to be independent of the heavens and the earth, and even the Heaven Tao was unable to notice him. Thus, he was able to pass through the last day's domain safely. Similarly, it was because of this layer of chaotic energy that no one was able to discern his origins. Huff huff, Feng Zichen stretched out his palm, and it seemed as if he'd grabbed the entire heavens and the earth. Peerless energy emanated from him, squeezed space, and completely restrained the mysterious man. Break! Feng Zichen exerted his strength in secret and was about to tear apart the disguise on the mysterious man. However, at this moment, an unexpected event occurred. The black saber in the mysterious man's hand suddenly emanated dazzling brilliance, and then boundless energy surged out from within it and forcefully blasted Feng Zichen's restraints away. Who is it? With a command in his heart, Feng Zichen withdrew the Hongmeng Daozhong, and he froze the space here before carefully sizing up the surroundings. Swoosh! Right at the instant Feng Zichen withdrew the Hongmeng Daozhong, the black saber tore through the sky, and boundless saber might erupted as it slashed down fiercely at him. Clang! The Hongmeng Daozhong shook lightly, and then it directly moved horizontally before Feng Zichen and collided with the black saber. Bang! After one blow, the black saber was directly knocked away by the Hongmeng Daozhong and fell into the depths of the void. Suppress! At this moment, Feng Zichen shouted and manipulated the Hongmeng Daozhong into the depths of the void, completely suppressing the black saber. In the void, the mysterious man who suddenly appeared tried to retrieve the black saber, but under the suppression of the Hongmeng Daozhong, he could not recall it no matter what he did. For a moment, he could not help but feel a little anxious. What a good trick! Accompanied by an embarrassed voice, another mysterious figure walked out of the void. However, his strength was undoubtedly a level higher than the mysterious man who was suppressed by Feng Zichen. He had already entered the level of primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Chaos Demon God! You are the Chaos Demon God. I remember you. You were one of the 9 Chaos Demon Gods who fought against the incarnations of the sages. So, you are the one he is relying on. Feng Zichen glanced coldly at the mysterious man and said indifferently, Yes, it is me. With me here, you can't touch him. The Chaos Demon God took a step forward and said, Ha! What a joke! Do you think you can do it alone? With a disdainful laugh, Feng Zichen grabbed the Hongmeng Daozhong and was about to suppress the Chaos Demon God together with the mysterious man from before. What an arrogant junior. He is really arrogant. Since he alone is not enough, how about adding us? While they were talking, another 4 Chaos Demon Gods walked out of the void. Including the previous one, there were now 5 Chaos Demon Gods standing in front of Feng Zichen. In addition to the 4 Chaos Demon Gods in the boundless starry sky, the 9 primordial Chaos Demon Gods who fought against the incarnations of the sages had all appeared. They all attacked Feng Zichen at the same time. 1 against 9. 5 Chaos Demon Gods? They are indeed powerful, but not enough. Chapter 6:21. Under the Tree of World, Feng Zichen was facing the 5 Chaos Demon Gods at the primordial chaos level. Instead of showing any fear, he was unusually arrogant. He pointed at the Chaos Demon Gods with one hand and said that they were no match for him. He was extremely arrogant and did not take them seriously at all. It was as if he was not facing the 5 high and mighty Chaos Demon Gods, but 5 Tom, Dick, and Harry. You. When such arrogant words reached the ears of the 5 Chaos Demon Gods, they were so angry that they were speechless. I have been in the chaos for many years, but I have never seen such an arrogant junior like you. Kid, let me see what you can do. Let me see what gives you the confidence to look down on the 5 of us. After a long time, the Chaos Demon Gods finally calmed down. They were angry and directly attacked Feng Zichen. Rumble. With a thought from the Demon God of Chaos, heaven and earth changed accordingly. The great path appeared, the Dharma was faintly discernible, and endless visions appeared, evolving into all kinds of mysterious superpowers. They blasted toward Feng Zichen with overwhelming force. Boom! It was as if the sea of stars had exploded and the world had collapsed. Dazzling light burst out and almost drowned everything. Heaven and earth lost their color, and only a terrifying power swept across everything as if it was going to destroy the past, present, and future. Come on then. However, Feng Zichen was not afraid at all. Hongmeng Daozhong, die! Feng Zichen grabbed the Hongmeng Daozhong and slammed it toward the superpowers that were coming toward him. Clang! The sound of the bell was faint and boundless. It was like the sound of the great path and contained supreme power. It had the ability to destroy all Dharma and superpowers. Rumble! Endless sound waves burst out and directly destroyed everything. In an instant, everything ceased to exist. Time, space, great path, and Dharma. At this moment, all of them lost their meaning. All that could be seen was the boundless aura of Hongmeng. Boom! The chi of Hongmeng surged and surged like a raging ocean. Boundless waves surged violently toward the 5 chaotic demon gods, attempting to drown them. Wherever the Hongmeng chi passed, the divine powers of the 5 chaotic demon gods were submerged, devoured, and became a part of the Hongmeng chi, making the Hongmeng chi even more powerful. Not good. It's Hongmeng's chi. Run. Seeing the ocean-like Hongmeng aura surging toward them in a more powerful manner after devouring their superpowers, the 5 chaos demon gods' expressions changed drastically. At this moment, they couldn't care less about their reputation. Before the aura of Hongmeng rushed over, they hurriedly hid in all directions. Boom, 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 the aura of Hongmeng was vast and mighty. It wreaked havoc in the void for a long time before it gradually subsided. As the aura of Hongmeng retreated, everything around them changed. The void was gone. Even the last day's domain that the heavenly Tao had specially set up to protect the Tree of World was completely assimilated by the surging aura of Hongmeng. After a long time, the Tree of World once again appeared in front of everyone in the primordial world. A huge divine tree stood between heaven and earth like a pillar of heaven and earth, holding up heaven and earth. Great and shocking. The sudden change completely alarmed the great divine powers and the chaos demon gods who were fighting on the other side. At this moment, they seemed to be shocked by the greatness of the Tree of World. They simultaneously stopped what they were doing and temporarily stopped fighting. The Tree of World? Is this your real goal? No wonder you guys were so crazy and reckless when you attacked. It turns out that your goal was to destroy the great desolate world. The great divine powers weren't fools. After seeing the Tree of World and thinking of the strange actions of the chaos demon gods, they naturally understood the other party's true intentions. What a good move! If His Majesty Ziwei hadn't been more skillful and ambushed under the Tree of World in advance, the primordial world would have been in danger today. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. If great Emperor Ziwei hadn't been there, the consequences would have been unimaginable. After figuring this out, the powerful divines began to have misgivings and stopped fighting with the chaos demonic god. Instead, they began to confront him. They couldn't fight anymore. If they were careless, the aftermath of the battle would exceed the limit that Pangu's incarnation could withstand. Then, the primordial world would really be in danger. The great divine powers were worried about the primordial world and didn't want to continue fighting. As for the chaos demon gods, they were worried about the changes at the Tree of World and chose to wait and see. For a moment, both sides reached a strange consensus. They looked at the Tree of World together. Cough, cough, cough. Accompanied by a series of violent coughs, the 5 chaos demon gods crawled out of the void in tattered clothes. Their battered figures no longer had a trace of their previous arrogance. Junior, I have underestimated you. You have mastered the power of Hongmeng. How amazing! However, do you think you can defeat us like this? You should know that there are 5 of us. But you're alone. Are you really that confident to fight against 5 of us? Perhaps it was because he had been defeated by a junior and lost face. but the Chaos Demon God's words were inevitably tinged with shame and anger. However, in addition to shame and anger, there was also some greed in the Chaos Demon God's tone. That was the Qi of Hongmeng, the legendary power that was comparable to the power of the Great Path. If they could master it, then perhaps they would be able to rely on it to attain a realm comparable to Pangu or even surpass Pangu and attain an unprecedented realm of the Great Path. When they thought up to here, the Chaos Demon Gods were excited to the point their bodies trembled, and their gazes towards Feng Zichen grew even more greedy. If it wasn't for them being afraid of his formidable strength, they would have probably pounced over directly and seized the Hongmeng Daozhong. Can you do it or not? Didn't all of you try it earlier? Your current attitude is the most powerful answer I can give you. Feng Zichen didn't take the threat of the Chaos Demon Gods seriously at all. The reason he dared to be so arrogant was naturally because he was extremely confident that he could easily suppress the 5 Chaos Demon Gods. Especially since the last day's domain had vanished, Feng Zichen was even more confident. You! Feng Zichen's words almost infuriated the Chaos Demon Gods, and they wished for nothing more than to tear Feng Zichen apart on the spot. However, they didn't dare attack rashly out of consideration for the Hongmeng Daozhong, and they could only forcefully suppress the flames of rage in their hearts. The aggrievance in their hearts was obvious. That aggrieved expression of wanting to attack yet not daring to attack could be said to be extremely brilliant. Very good. I hope you'll be able to maintain this arrogance in the future. In the end, the Chaos Demon God seemed to be unwilling to give up for the sake of saving face, and he spoke ruthlessly. Tisage. Feng Zichen displayed extreme disdain towards this. The Chaos Demon God, who was already furious, was completely unable to suppress the flames of rage in his heart after being provoked by Feng Zichen. They'd broken through his defenses. Bastard! Kill! The Chaos Demon God was furious to the extreme, and he attacked with all his might towards Feng Zichen. Without a sound, a giant hand reached down. In an instant, the entire world turned dark because the hand was so huge that it covered the entire sky, squeezed the void, and covered the land where the Tree of World was located. The sect master attacked with one hand covering the sky. A large hand surrounded by chaotic demonic aura covered everything, turning day into night. It was boundless. He wanted to grab the Tree of World and freeze time. The river of time trembled and stopped for him. Everything withered. The boundless starry sky was cold and silent. Everything trembled under this hand. Boom! The order of heaven and earth collapsed, and the rules dissipated. Only a black hand reached into this world and became the only one. Behind this large hand were 5 overbearing demonic shadows. Their bodies filled the entire sky, and they exuded a terrifying aura. Kill! The 5 of them shouted in unison and launched their strongest attack towards Feng Zichen together. Boom! In an instant, infinite laws appeared and filled the sky with boundless power. As if the sky was falling, they pressed down on Feng Zichen. Good timing! Feng Zichen was fearless. In the face of such a powerful attack, he still dared to face it head-on. At this moment, he had invincible confidence. Even if he had the chance to interrupt the other party's magical power and prevent the attack from taking shape. But he didn't do so. Instead, he gave the other party enough time to form this unimaginable attack. Feng Zichen wanted to defeat the Chaos Fiend God in his strongest state to shatter their pride and confidence. And all of this confidence came from his trump card that was beyond imagination. Boom! When the Chaos Fiend God's magical power was fully formed, it pressed down on him. Feng Zichen moved. He punched out. The fist mark that illuminated the past, present, and future rose up, roaring and resplendent. There was a loud boom. His fist mark pierced through time and space and collided with the majestic hand of murderous aura. The next moment, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Immortals cried and demons howled. All kinds of strange phenomena appeared, shining in the primordial world and shaking the universe. Bang! After the ultimate move, heaven and earth froze for a moment. Then, there was an earth-shattering fluctuation, and endless brilliance bloomed. The result was The Chaos Fiend God was no match for Feng Zichen's power. The huge black hand of murderous aura was shattered by his fist mark and exploded in the void. The murderous aura of chaos fell from the void like rain. It was extremely shocking. Of course, the shock was not without a price. If the murderous aura of chaos fell into the primordial world, it would inevitably cause an extremely bad effect and give birth to all kinds of strange things. Clatter. At the critical moment, Feng Zichen's body suddenly emitted a brilliant brilliance. Mysterious ripples spread from his body and turned into a bright rain of light. It spread toward the primordial world and met the murderous aura of chaos. Sizzle. No one knew where the light rain came from. It seemed to be the nemesis of the murderous aura of chaos. As soon as it met, it cancelled each other out. Soon, the murderous aura of chaos disappeared under the light rain. However, the brilliance on Feng Zichen's body did not dim. Instead, it became brighter. At the same time, the ripples under his feet became more mysterious. Endless mysterious runes appeared and disappeared. Like the great Tao, they spread toward the Chaos Fiend God. Set off by the mysterious brilliance, Feng Zichen's figure became more and more ethereal. His whole body emitted a mysterious aura, as if he was the way of heaven. Rumble. The fist mark was bright and penetrated everything. After breaking the murderous aura hand, it hit the Chaos Fiend God. Puff. After the punch, bright divine blood splashed and fell into the primordial world, turning into a big river. With just one blow, the Chaos Fiend God was injured. Way of heaven. So, this is why you are so confident? The indelible way injury spread in his body, causing the aura of the Chaos Fiend God to weaken. At this time, they finally understood why Feng Zichen was so arrogant. That was way of heaven. With just Feng Zichen's strength, he would definitely not be able to resist the 5 of them. However, with the way of heaven, even if 50 of them joined forces, they would not be a match for Feng Zichen. With the support of the way of heaven, Feng Zichen easily obtained the power to defeat the 5 of them. Haha, don't you think it's a little too late to understand now? Feng Zichen laughed and said. He did not know what these Chaos Fiend gods were thinking. They actually dared to touch the World Tree at this time. How ridiculous. Back then, the demon ancestor Rahu dared to attack the World Tree because the way of heaven was not in the primordial world. But now, with the retreat of the Chaos Fiend gods, the way of heaven had returned to the primordial world. Attacking the World Tree at this time, was the way of heaven really a vegetarian? Previously, they might have been able to hide from the way of heaven's perception with various methods. However, with the disappearance of the last day's domain, how could the way of heaven not notice that there was a problem with the World Tree? It would definitely come here personally. At that time, under the gaze of the way of heaven, no matter how miraculous the concealment technique was, it would lose its effect. Earlier, Feng Zichen had utilized the Hongmeng Daozhong to destroy the last day's domain for the sake of drawing the attention of the way of heaven, so that everyone would be completely exposed before the way of heaven. Just like that, on what basis could they be so arrogant? The facts were just as Feng Zichen had expected. After it saw the Chaos Fiend gods intend to destroy the World Tree, the way of heaven was extremely furious. It immediately used Feng Zichen to teach the Chaos Fiend gods a lesson. This was precisely the reason why Feng Zichen was able to defeat the 5 Chaos Fiend gods. The energy of the way of heaven really is formidable, as expected of a special existence that inherited a portion of the strength of us 3,000 Chaos Fiend gods. You've won this time. But next time you won't be so lucky. They were clearly aware that they had no chance of winning after the appearance of the way of heaven. So the Chaos Fiend gods didn't hesitate and immediately intended to leave. However, they'd finally encountered an opportunity to annihilate the Chaos Fiend gods with great difficulty. So how could Feng Zichen allow them to do as they wished? Suppress. With a command in his heart, Feng Zichen mobilized the energy of the way of heaven and intended to suppress the Chaos Fiend gods. Today, no matter what, he had to kill all of them and deal with a great calamity in the primordial world. However, the Chaos Fiend gods were obviously much smarter than he'd imagined. When they noticed that the situation was bad, the Chaos Fiend gods suddenly made a shocking move. Chapter 6:22. Pardon. At the same time, the 5 chaos demon gods were vaporized and turned into the purest origin of heaven and earth. Rumble. The mighty power of the way of heaven fell, but it encountered a power of the same origin as itself. For a moment, the mighty power of the way of heaven and earth resonated with the origin of heaven and earth, rendering Feng Zichen's attack completely ineffective. The mighty power that suppressed everything fell, but it passed through the body of the chaos demon gods and did not cause any harm to them. Interesting. However, you are dreaming if you think you can escape from me with this. Feng Zichen was not discouraged by the failure of his attack. If the chaos demon gods could be dealt with so easily, they would not be the biggest threat in the untainted land. Refine. With a thought, Feng Zichen manipulated the power of the way of heaven and condensed a huge tripod cauldron in the void, absorbing the origin of heaven and earth that the 5 chaos demon gods had turned into. This was a supreme great magic power, the furnace of the way of heaven. Since the 5 chaos demon gods had the intention to turn into the origin of heaven and earth, how could Feng Zichen not fulfill their wish? Therefore, he immediately used the supreme great magic power, the furnace of the way of heaven and earth, to envelop them and try to refine them to help them become a part of heaven and earth. Rumble. The furnace of the way of heaven rotated and boundless Tao fire rose. Yin and Yang were the firewood and the Dharma was the fire. They turned into boundless refining power and surged toward the origin of heaven and earth that the chaos demon gods had turned into in an attempt to refine them. Great magic power. But all of this ends here. In the furnace of the way of heaven, the 5 chaos demon gods were not afraid at all in the face of the refining power that was surging toward them. Instead, they were unusually relaxed. It was as if they were not in the furnace of the way of heaven, but some other sacred ground. What? Hearing this, Feng Zichen frowned, and an ominous premonition arose in his heart. Immediately, he didn't dare to hesitate. He wanted to activate the power of the way of the heaven to the greatest extent so that he could refine all 5 chaos demon gods and completely cut off their vitality. However, before Feng Zichen could make a move, the origin of heaven and earth formed by the 5 chaos demon gods in the heavenly Tao furnace suddenly fused into one with the help of the refining power. Boom! In an instant, an extremely powerful aura erupted, shaking the universe and shattering the heavenly Tao furnace. At the same time, in the distant outer realm, in the most mysterious place, the will of chaos slowly awakened. Rumble! An extremely ancient and mighty power suddenly rose from the chaos and flew towards the untainted world at high speed. This is... The chaos demonic god was summoning the chaos will. This was the most powerful life-saving means given to the chaos demon gods by the will of chaos. The more chaos demon gods there were, the stronger the power they could summon would be. If 3,000 chaos fiend celestials were to gather, they could even stand shoulder to shoulder with the great Tao. At this moment, in order to deal with Feng Zichen, the 5 chaos demon gods joined forces and borrowed an extremely strong power from the chaos will. This power was strong enough to destroy everything. Of course, that was under normal circumstances. After all, this place was the untainted land and was protected by the great god Pangu. Any external power would be weakened by the great god Pangu after entering the untainted land. In other words, the power that the 5 chaos demon gods borrowed from the chaos will might be strong enough at the beginning, but after entering the untainted land, it would be good if they could retain 1% of their power. However, the extreme sublimation of power in an instant was enough to catch Feng Zichen off guard and cause some flaws in his blockade. After the power of the chaos will descended, the strength of the 5 chaos demon gods soared countless times in an instant. Rumble! Unparalleled power exploded, and the furnace of heavenly Tao shattered, revealing an indomitable figure. Violent power poured out of his body and swept everything, shattering all the means that Feng Zichen used to seal time and space. Go! Almost without hesitation, the 5 chaos demon gods directly fled to the chaos beyond the sky after breaking Feng Zichen's blockade. Fight. It was impossible to fight, because no matter what, they could not win. In the untainted land, the way of heaven represented invincibility. No one or anything could compete with the way of heaven. Even the Chaos Demon Gods were no exception. And it was because of this that the Chaos Demon Gods fled to the chaos beyond the sky without looking back after breaking Feng Zichen's blockade. The gap was too big. Even if they were supported by the power of the Chaos Will, it was still the same. Now, the reason why the Chaos Demon Gods could escape was that their strength had increased too quickly and did not give Feng Zichen any time to react. This gave them a chance to escape. If they delayed for a while and waited for Feng Zichen to react, it would be difficult for them to escape under the power of the Way of Heaven. Want to leave? Stay! After a moment of astonishment, Feng Zichen snapped out of his daze. Seeing that the Chaos Demon Celestial was about to escape, he couldn't care about anything else. He summoned the primordial Chaos Dao Bell and blasted it at the Chaos Demon Celestial. Dang, the melodious sound of the bell rang. It was like the funeral sound of ancient times. It set off purple waves. It destroyed all laws and destroyed everything. At this moment, under the activation of the power of the Way of Heaven, the power of Hongmeng Daozhong was fully displayed by Feng Zichen. In an instant, an endless amount of primordial qi appeared. At this moment, the entire world turned purple. Everything was drowned out and could no longer be seen. It was a vast expanse. When everything was over, Hongmeng Daozhong retracted the Hongmeng qi. The scene that appeared in front of him was shocking. Time, void, great Tao, law, everything no longer existed. It had completely turned into a state of nothingness. Of course, the traces of the Chaos Demon Gods had also disappeared without a trace. No one knew if they had escaped or if they had been swallowed by the Hongmeng qi. So powerful. Even Feng Zichen was shocked by the scene in front of him, since Hongmeng Daozhong had been promoted to a Khanate Cardinal Treasure. This was the first time he had fully activated his power. It was indeed shocking. It could be said to be ridiculously powerful. The space that had been drowned by the Hongmeng qi had completely turned into a state of nothingness. Could not even be repaired. One could see, after the Hongmeng qi disappeared, the power of heaven and earth tried to repair the broken void. However, something shocking happened. No matter how powerful the power of heaven and earth was, when it came into contact with the broken void, it would all be assimilated and turned into a state of nothingness. Hongmeng Daozhong's attack had almost caused permanent damage to the primordial world. It could not be healed. It was too powerful. But this is good as well. After he recovered from his initial shock, Feng Zichen spoke in a slightly relaxed manner. Even though Hongmeng Daozhong's attack had caused permanent damage to the primordial world, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. After all, this was where the world tree resided. The space here had completely transformed into a state of nothingness, and it could be said to have provided a natural layer of defense for the world tree. Even the energy of heaven and earth would be assimilated by it, let alone experts with great divine abilities. Every single one of them would probably die. With such a force protecting the world tree, it was simply countless times stronger than the last day's domain. Even though it wasn't completely safe, it was probably very difficult for a situation like this to occur. With a plan in his heart, Feng Zichen stopped paying attention to the broken void, and he converged his attention onto Hongmeng Daozhong instead. As for the broken void, he allowed it to exist to deter those with ulterior motives. Tisk, TSK, TSK. This group of Chaos Fiend Celestials really fled quickly. Feng Zichen couldn't help but speak with slight disappointment as he glanced at the interior of Hongmeng Daozhong. There, a ball of quintessence of the heavens and the earth was floating there silently while emanating boundless profundity. It was the quintessence of the heavens and the earth that the 5 Chaos Fiend Celestials had transformed into. Unfortunately, it wasn't complete, and it was only around half of it. Earlier, even though Feng Zichen's reaction was extremely swift, the Chaos Fiend Celestials had still taken the initiative in the end. So, when Feng Zichen made a move, he was half a step too late, and he wasn't able to kill all of them. However, he wasn't completely without gains. Hongmeng Daozhong's attack had forcefully severed the bodies of the Chaos Fiend Celestials, and it had forcefully left behind half of their quintessence. In other words, even though the Chaos Fiend Celestials hadn't perished, their strength had been directly reduced by around half, and it would take an unknown amount of time and price to fully recover. It's not completely without gains. At the very least, this quintessence is enough for Hongmeng Daozhong to improve by a small step again. With a thought, Feng Zichen directly activated Hongmeng Daozhong to devour the quintessence of the heavens and the earth. Currently, Hongmeng Daozhong was only a lower-grade innate true treasure. Presumably, after devouring the quintessence of the heavens and the earth, it would definitely improve by another level and become a middle-grade innate true treasure. A mere lower-grade innate true treasure already had such powerful power. What would it be like when it was upgraded to a middle-grade innate true treasure? Feng Zichen was looking forward to it. At this very moment. Don't you have anything to say? After putting away Hongmeng Daozhong, Feng Zichen suddenly spoke to the void beside him. Ha ha! As expected, I can't hide it from you. With a chuckle, a figure quietly emerged from the void. It was the mysterious man who wanted to destroy the Tree of World. Previously, although the Chaos Demon Celestial had come to save him, in fact, he had come to save the innate true treasure in his hands. Saving him was just a matter of convenience. However, as the situation deteriorated rapidly, the Chaos Demon Celestial could not even protect himself, let alone save him. Therefore, as the war broke out, the Chaos Demon Celestial could not care about the mysterious man at all. Logically speaking, without the protection of the Chaos Demon Celestial, the mysterious man should have died in the aftermath of the battle between Feng Zichen and the Chaos Demon Celestial. After all, a battle between Origin Immortals was far beyond the reach of a half-step Origin Immortal. However, he did not expect the mysterious man to use some unknown means to attach himself to the Tree of World. Therefore, not only did he survive the aftermath of the battle, but he also survived until the end. If not for the fact that Feng Zichen was the master of the Tree of World and had sufficient perception of him, he would have been fooled by him and escaped. However, the mysterious man was unlucky to have dared to play tricks on the Tree of World right under Feng Zichen's nose. Didn't he just run right into the muzzle of the gun? I really don't understand. Is the temptation of becoming a saint so great? How could it cause you to fall so low? You must know that with your talent, fellow Taoist, you'll be able to ascend to the supreme origin Tao realm one day. Why do you have to commit such evil acts for the elusive position of a saint? Looking at the mysterious man in front of him, Feng Zichen lamented bitterly. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that the mysterious man had not been possessed by the Chaos Demon Celestial. That was why Feng Zichen was puzzled. To be able to reach half-step Origin Immortal through hard work alone was proof of his great talent. At the very least, it would not be difficult for him to become a Chaos Dalio Jinxian. Then what was the reason for such a promising figure to be willing to risk universal condemnation and work with the Chaos Demon Celestial to destroy the primordial world for the sake of a position restricted by the heavenly Tao? Wouldn't it be great to be an unrestrained Chaos Dalio Jinxian? Haha! What do you know, fellow Taoist? It's not difficult for the poor way to reach Origin Immortal, but what about the realms above that? There are 12 levels of Origin Immortal, and each level is like ascending to the heavens. If she only relies on hard work, I'm afraid the poor way will never reach the peak of Origin Immortal in her lifetime, let alone the infinite Tao realm. That's why the poor way needs a position of saint. As long as she becomes a saint with the help of the heavenly Tao, the poor way will have a chance to set foot in the infinite Tao realm and the more mysterious realms above it, let alone the peak of Origin Immortal. Do you understand now, fellow Taoist? The mysterious man seemed to have thought of the future prospects and spoke with some fervor. Hearing this, Feng Zichen was a little speechless. What this person said might not be unreasonable. Although becoming a saint had all kinds of inconveniences, there were more benefits. Just as the mysterious man had said, with the help of the heavenly Tao, it was easier for a saint to reach a higher realm than a primordial Dalio Jinxian. If not for this, how could the three pure ones and the others be willing to become saints and be manipulated by the heavenly Tao? Obviously, that was because the benefits of becoming a saint were far greater than the price he had to pay. But this was not the reason why he betrayed the primordial world. If it was for strength, if he could betray the primordial world, then this world was not far from destruction. Therefore, this person's actions could not be tolerated. Moreover, this person thought, wasn't it a little too much? Now, he had not even reached primordial chaos and he was already thinking about higher realms. Wasn't he thinking too much? The most taboo thing about cultivation was to bite off more than one could chew. This person must have been fooled by the chaos demon god. Otherwise, why would he think so much for no reason? He had endured hundreds of millions of years of bitter cultivation, and now he suddenly betrayed the primordial world. Feng Zichen did not believe that no one had instigated it. But these were not important anymore. No matter what the reason was, since he dared to betray the primordial world, there was no reason for him to continue existing. Chapter 6:23. Fellow Taoist, now that things have come to this, let me reveal your true face. As he spoke, Feng Zichen stretched out his hand and grabbed the mysterious man. He was about to break his disguise and completely erase his existence. However, seeing that Feng Zichen's magical power was about to reach him, the mysterious man suddenly smiled strangely. Then his body collapsed. Like smoke, in the blink of an eye he disappeared from the world. Ha ha! Fellow Taoist Ziwei, you have won this round, but the contest between us is not over yet. Next time, I hope you are still so confident. The wisps of smoke dissipated, and there was no trace of the mysterious man. Only the faint sound of Tao kept echoing in the air, as a trace of the mysterious man's existence. Self-Taoification? You are quite decisive. However, do you think I can't find you like this? How ridiculous! Although Feng Zichen was a little shocked by the disappearance of the mysterious man, he was not too surprised. As a great magician in the ancient times, how could he be suppressed so easily? He must have countless trump cards. Taoification. It meant returning to heaven and earth. Under normal circumstances, a living creature who chose to Taoification must have completely fallen. However, the mysterious man chose to Taoification at this moment. Of course, his purpose was not to commit suicide, but to escape from Feng Zichen and hide his identity to facilitate his future plans. Unlike the Chaos Fiend God, the mysterious man was a native of the Untainted Land. He had lived in the Untainted Land for countless years and had even heard about the Tao in the Purple Cloud Palace. Over the endless years, he had hidden countless secret moves and trump cards. And these trump cards and secret moves were enough to ensure that after his death, he could return to the Untainted Land as quickly as possible. Of course, there was no perfect magical power in the world. Perhaps someone could block his resurrection. Therefore, in order to prevent accidents from happening, after being suppressed by Feng Zichen, he saw that there was no hope of escaping, so he directly killed himself and Taoified between heaven and earth. In this way, even if he died in his own hands, he would not have to worry about accidents. In terms of effect, this method was indeed very good. At the very least, Feng Zichen had no ability to stop the mysterious man from Taoifying. How rich was the mysterious man's source energy? He chose to Taoification and return his origin to heaven and earth. Heaven and earth could not be more happy, so how could it refuse? At this time, if someone dared to interfere with the process of the mysterious man's Taoification, they would be against heaven and earth. The outcome one could imagine. It was because of this that Feng Zichen would not forcibly interrupt the mysterious man's human transformation. The price of forming karma with the world was too great. From a certain point of view, this kind of escape method could be said to be unsolvable. This was using one's own origin to buy one's life back then. When Feng Zichen was sealed by Donghuang Tai, he had used this technique to transform the heavens and the earth and escaped from the seal. Until today, he didn't expect that there would be someone who used his methods back then to escape from his hands. Fate was truly making fools of people. However, although this method could be said to be unsolvable, the price to pay for using this method was beyond imagination. One had to die once and completely disperse all of one's innate origin. This was using hundreds of millions of years of bitter cultivation in exchange for a chance to escape. In the past, after Feng Zichen Daoified, if it were not for the 4 imperial thrones, he would not know how long it would take for him to fully recover his strength. In other words, although the mysterious man had escaped from Feng Zichen, his strength was bound to drop to the freezing point. It would be wrong to be able to maintain the combat strength of Dalio Jingxian. Now was the best time to kill him. Just a few golden immortals of the great overarching heaven could completely destroy his life force. As for not knowing the identity of the mysterious man and his whereabouts, how could he kill him? There was no need to worry about this. The mysterious man's movements were very fast. He did not give Feng Zichen a chance to tear apart his disguise. However, from the moment he used a special method to possess the World Tree, he had exposed too much information. With the ability of the World Tree, if one wanted to possess his body and not be rejected by him, the person who possessed him must have unimaginable achievements in the wood element. After all, the World Tree was the leader of the primordial spiritual roots. It was the most supreme existence in the innate wood element. If one wanted to not be rejected by him, apart from having an innate spiritual root, one could only have unimaginable achievements in the innate wood element. One of the 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud Palace, and one had unimaginable achievements in the innate wood element. More importantly, this person had just died. Even if he was resurrected in time, his strength would drop greatly. With these 3 conditions added together, there were not many people in the primordial world who met them. In this way, wouldn't the range be narrowed down? After all, there were only 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud Palace. Among these 3,000 people, it might be a little difficult for Feng Zichen to find a powerful person who had just died and was good at the innate wood element. However, for Jin Yuanzi, the great void Taoist, the Kunping Patriarch, and the others, these powerful people of the Purple Cloud Palace, it was an extremely easy task. At most, it would take some energy. They had all heard of the Purple Cloud Palace. They saw each other all the time. Who didn't know each other? Even someone like the Nether River Patriarch, who was a loner, was remembered, let alone other people. As long as these powerful people took action, they would find the mysterious man even if he was hiding in the chaos beyond the sky. As long as he had existed, there would definitely be traces left. By following these traces, they would be able to locate the traces of the mysterious man. As for whether those powerful people would be willing to help, of course they would. If the mysterious man was just purely an enemy of the human race, the powerful people would most likely stand by and watch. They might even be happy to see it happen. However, he should never have thought of destroying the primordial world. This was to become an enemy of the entire primordial world. At this moment, no one in the entire primordial world could tolerate him, let alone save him. Even his former friends would turn against him and become one of the people who hunted him down. The traitor was destined to die without a burial place. This matter has to be done as soon as possible. Otherwise, the longer it drags on, the more variables there will be. Who knows, I might really give that person a chance to escape. The mysterious man was so confident in his self-Tao immolation. Obviously, he was fully prepared. He was confident that he could be resurrected in an extremely short period of time and quickly pass the period of weakness. Therefore, this matter could not be delayed. It was best to find out his true identity before he was resurrected so as to completely cut off his hope of resurrection. With a thought, Feng Zichen was about to head to the battlefield in the depths of the void to meet up with those powerful people. However, just as he was about to move, he suddenly remembered something. He stopped in his tracks and looked at the void around the World Tree that had completely turned into nothingness. I still have to deal with this place. Otherwise, if someone accidentally trespasses into this place, it will be troublesome. Looking around, Feng Zichen thought to himself. The power of nothingness was still too powerful, and it could not distinguish between friend and foe. If someone accidentally stepped into it, his ending would definitely be extremely miserable. For this, Feng Zichen still had to make a good arrangement to isolate this place from the outside world. If someone still barged into this place, then the other party's purpose was worth pondering. Thinking about it, he would not be wronged. Seal. With a thought, Feng Zichen raised the Hongmeng Daozhong. Dang, in an instant, the sound of a bell rang. The aura of Hong Meng covered the sky and earth and turned into a huge purple net, completely enveloping this place and completely isolating it from the outside world. He believed that with this net formed by the aura of Hong Meng, as long as the other party did not insist on entering the vicinity of the world tree, he would definitely not be able to pass through the purple net. That's good. Let's go. Putting away the Hong Meng Daozhong, Feng Zichen transformed into a purple aura of Hong Meng and carefully passed through the bounded domain of nothingness to leave this place. Under the power of nothingness, there was no time or space in this place, which eliminated the possibility of someone breaking through the air and arriving here. Similarly, if one wanted to leave this place, the ordinary method was also different, because this place did not exist in the first place. Since it did not exist, how could one leave? Only the aura of Hong Meng had the power to create something out of nothing and could freely travel through this place. Just as Feng Zichen was traveling through the bounded domain of nothingness, the other two battlefields also changed. First was the boundless starry sky. After seeing that the 5 Chaos Demon Gods were defeated, the 4 Chaos Demon Gods who were fighting with God Pangu directly withdrew and left. The Pangu celestial being did not stop them. They were not the original bodies of the Chaos Demon Gods, so there was no point in them staying. Instead, they would force the other party to fight to the death and bring great damage to the boundless starry sky. Therefore, Feng Zichen allowed them to leave. On the other side, around the main battlefield of the human clan, seeing that their plan had failed, the Chaos Demon Gods did not have the heart to fight with the great mediums, so they all fled to outer space. Regarding this, the great divine ability masters were naturally very unwilling in their hearts. But they had no other choice. The strength of the two sides was not much different. If one side wanted to escape, the other side would definitely not be able to stop it. Fellow Taoists, please come to the heavenly court for a chat. I have something important to discuss with you. Just as everyone was hesitating, Feng Zichen's voice suddenly came from outer space and fell into their ears. Let's go. Knowing that Feng Zichen summoned them at this time, there must be something big happening. Everyone did not hesitate and rushed to the heavenly court. As the two sides left one after another, Xian Yuan's side and Qi Yu's side looked at the devastation on the ground and were speechless for a while. After so many things had happened, Xian Yuan and Qi Yu did not want to continue fighting at this moment. They withdrew their troops and went back to stabilize the people's hearts. But both sides understood that after this, the next battle might be the final battle. In the heavenly court, after Feng Zichen told everyone about the mysterious person, he directly left and returned to Ziwei Star. What happened after that, without Feng Zichen's arrangement, those great mediums naturally knew what to do. Fellow Taoists, since that person has the idea of destroying the untainted world, it can be seen that he is no longer of the same mind as us. He is no longer our fellow Taoists. So, now is not the time to be merciful. I think all of you know what to do. After Feng Zichen left, Zhen Yuanzi said to everyone bitterly. Among the people present, his cultivation might not be the strongest, but in terms of merit and contribution to the untainted world, there was no doubt that Zhen Yuanzi was the highest. Therefore, he was qualified to occupy the main position. In fact, that was the case. These words were obviously more suitable for Zhen Yuanzi to say than for Feng Zichen. It was precisely because he understood this that Feng Zichen left directly after he finished speaking. After all, no matter what, that mysterious person was once their fellow Taoist and fellow Taoist. They closed the door to discuss how to clean up the sect. That was their own business. Feng Zichen was an outsider and it was really not appropriate for him to interfere. All the races have been caught. The internal strife of the human race should come to an end. On Ziwei Star, Feng Zichen silently watched the changes of the human race. In his eyes, this internal strife of the human race was like a huge storm. It had completely involved all the races and they could not escape. The fish had been caught. Of course, it was time to reap the harvest. Ao Shui, ask the girl to go to the Gaochen Heavenly Palace and take the Emperor's sword that is stored in the Heavenly Emperor Palace and give it to Shenyuan. In the starry sky, Feng Zichen transmitted his voice to Ao Shui. With Qi Yu's strength and the help of the witch race, if Feng Zichen did not increase the stakes for Shenyuan, he would definitely not be able to defeat Qiyu. No matter how declining the witch race was, they were still the witch race. Their strength was far beyond imagination. Moreover, had the witch race really declined? One had to know. What was the use of the 6 paths of reincarnation? With this treasure, it meant that the witch race had infinite possibilities. Those great witches who had fallen in the battle between the witch race and the demon race would eventually return one by one. Therefore, with the help of the witch race, Shen Yuan alone would definitely not be able to defeat Qiyu. Therefore, at this moment, it was up to Feng Zichen to make a move. The emperor's sword that he asked the girl to go to the Gaochen Heavenly Palace to retrieve for Shen Yuan was none other than the witch-killing sword that Di Jun had refined with the flesh and blood of countless humans. After the witch race calamity, this sword, along with the heavenly cycle star banner, fell into the hands of Feng Zichen. The achievement of this sword could be said to have created the blood and tears of the human race. Therefore, this sword carried the thick resentment that came from the bodies of the innocent humans who had died tragically. In order to eliminate the resentment of this sword, Feng Zichen placed it in the Heavenly Emperor Palace and baptized it with the willpower of the human race day and night. Finally, it was forged into a supreme divine sword that protected the human race. This sword had no name. It was its duty to protect the human race. Therefore, this sword's killing power was unparalleled. The best protection was to kill. Killing all the enemies would naturally give one the greatest security. The witch-killing sword. It was one of the strongest postnatal supreme treasures. After being baptized by the willpower of the human race, it had undoubtedly become stronger. Chapter 6:24. Under the baptism of the wish power of the human race, the sword had completely dissolved all the resentment and transformed into the race weapon of the human race. It was connected to the fate of the human race. In other words, the sword had already transcended the limits of its level and could not be judged by common sense. The power it could exert was related to the fate of the human race. The stronger the fate of the human race, the stronger the power it could exert. If the fate of the human race reached its peak one day, it could exert the power of a Khanate treasure, or even surpass it. Of course, if the human race declined, the power of the sword would drop to the freezing point or even collapse. In short, the power of the sword was related to the fate of the human race. With the current fate of the human race, the sword could exert the power of a supreme-grade Khanate spirit treasure, or even infinitely close to a Khanate treasure. In this way, with the help of the sword, Shen Yuan might be able to defeat Qiyu. Yes, it was only a possibility, not a certainty. If Shen Yuan could get help from Feng Zichen, Qiyu could also get help from Hutu. With the foundation of the Wu tribe, the treasures they offered were not necessarily inferior to those offered by Feng Zichen. Therefore, in order to be safe, Feng Zichen gave Shen Yuan more than that. Just as the girl was heading to Gaochen Heavenly Palace, the mysterious West Kunlun in the Untainted Land finally revealed a corner of its mysterious veil. Caw! With a high-pitched caw, a blue phoenix wrapped in blue flames flew out of West Kunlun with a veiled goddess on its back. It flew towards the territory of the human race. This woman was the master of West Kunlun, the leader of the female immortals in the Untainted Land, and the disciple of the Queen Mother of the West. At the same time, she was also one of the 3 ancestors of the human race, Zihuangzi clan. He went to the human race. His purpose was naturally to help Shen Yuan. This was another trump card Feng Zichen had prepared for Shen Yuan. Has Zihuang left? Then it's time for me to make my move. On the Ziwei star, after Feng Zichen saw 9 Heavens mystical maiden walking out of West Kunlun, he no longer hesitated and immediately sent a message to the 5 and 8 races, asking them to help Shen Yuan's side. At the same time, Feng Zichen also issued a decree to the Heavenly Court, ordering the experts of the Heavenly Court to come down and support the human emperor Shen Yuan. This was a benefit for them. If they could assist the human emperor in unifying the Untainted Land, those who had participated in the war would more or less gain some merit when the war ended. After all, things were different now. As the great desolate world became increasingly perfect, it became increasingly difficult to obtain merit. Therefore, every major event that was related to merit was a great opportunity for everyone, and they could not miss it no matter what. Orders were passed down from the Z-Way star into the ears of the 5 and 8 races experts and the heaven court's gods. For a time, the untainted land was in turmoil again. Many experts responded to Feng Zichen's call and set off from the dojo to the ancestral land of the human race to help the human emperor Shenyuan. It was precisely because of this that the strength of Xuanyuan's side soared several times in a very short period of time. When Feng Zichen was helping Shenyuan, Qi Yu's side was not calm either. A Khanate Grand Magus who lived in seclusion walked out of the Pangu Palace with the Grand Magus blood essence and came to Qi Yu. He was Xing Tian. The person who came was the most powerful Grand Magus of the wizard clan, Xing Tian. Xing Tian was born from Pangu's heart. He was the first Grand Magus to be born after the birth of the ancestral Magus. He could be said to be the number 1 Magus below the 12 ancestral Magi, with the cultivation of the great perfection of the sage-to-be. Xing Tian had come. He had come to help Qi Yu. This was not difficult to understand. Qi Yu was the reincarnation of Wu Shisan, and Wu Shisan was the existence that replaced Hutu. As a Grand Magus of the Hutu tribe, Xing Tian had to stand on the same side as him. In fact, the Grand Magus of the wizard clan who had been teaching Qi Yu was the incarnation of Xing Tian. What kind of status did Wu Shisan have in the wizard clan? How could he not have a protector when he was reincarnated? Xing Tian was his protector. This time, the reason why Xing Tian came was that he could not stand it anymore. The two sides were originally evenly matched, but because of the other side's cheating, the gap between them suddenly widened. How could the bad-tempered Xing Tian tolerate this? Therefore, he took a small part of the Grand Magus blood essence from the Pangu Palace to improve the strength of Qi Yu's side. Although Qi Yu's force was made up of countless mutant branches, the foundation of this alliance and the backbone of it was the wizard clan where Qi Yu came from. The wizard clan. They were lives born from the intermarriage between the human race and the wizard clan. They inherited the bloodline of the wizard clan and were born stronger than ordinary humans. They could even be compared to the innate human clan in the ancient times. With such talent, their understanding of the Tao of gods and demons was obviously much stronger than ordinary humans. Because of this, they were powerful. Among the human race, there were not many clans who could compete with the wizard clan. Only the Feng clan where Feng Zichen came from had better talent than the wizard clan because they were favored by Feng Zichen. However, the pure Feng clan was the royal family of the human race. There were very few of them and they could not be compared to the wizard clan. And it created the powerful reputation of the wizard clan. If such a powerful wizard clan refined the Grand Magus blood essence, their strength would definitely increase by a few levels. In this way, it would be even more difficult for the human race to compete with them. Moreover, Xing Tian came here not only with the Grand Magus blood essence, but also with the innate divine weapon that the 12 ancestral magi had forged for Wu Shisan. It was a large halberd that was surrounded by a murderous aura and emitted a terrifying wave. The name of the weapon was the Wizard Halberd. It was simple and straightforward, very fitting with the naming style of the wizard clan. The aura emitted by the Wizard Halberd was unusually strong. However, it had no level. Not only it, but the weapons of the other ancestral magi also had no level. They were the purest weapons and there were no marks of Tao or rule marks on them. The only thing they possessed was power, incomparable power. They had unleashed the power they had inherited from Pangu to the pinnacle. It was full of the beauty of strength. This kind of weapon that abandoned all Tao and only retained the purest strength was undoubtedly powerful in the hands of the ancestral magi who had strong physical bodies. It was unimaginably strong. It could be said that once Qi Yu mastered the Wizard Halberd, his strength would definitely increase by more than a few times. There was nothing in the world that could not be broken. If it could not be broken, it was not because of the lack of strength, but because the strength was not enough. 1,000 years later, Shenyuan integrated all the forces under his command and felt that the time was right. He launched an army to attack Qi Yu. At the same time, Qi Yu's side had also digested the resources that Xing Tian had brought from Pangu's palace. Their strength had increased greatly. Therefore, Qi Yu also moved and launched an army to attack Shenyuan. Just like that, A shocking battle broke out between the two sides in Zhuelu. At the beginning of the battle, the two sides tacitly launched the fiercest attacks in an attempt to destroy each other in one fell swoop. However, because the two sides were evenly matched in strength, they fought for a long time, but there was no winner. Both sides were exchanging blows back and forth, fighting to their heart's content, but they were unable to determine a victor. Over time, the battle was in a stalemate. However, this stalemate did not last long. Very soon, it was broken by a sudden change of events. The other folk from the Seven Stars continent and the other folk from the 5 pre-celestial races suddenly rebelled and joined Shenyuan. This sudden turn of events could be said to have caught Qiyu off guard. Similarly, because of these mutants' betrayal, the strength of Xuanyuan's side increased, while the strength of Qiyu's side decreased greatly. As a result, the situation changed immediately. The previous evenly matched situation was completely reversed. Qiyu's side was defeated by Xuanyuan's side and fled in a sorry state. During this period, Qiyu tried to turn the tide and reorganize his army to fight Shenyuan to the death. However, before he could make a move, what greeted him was the joint attack of all the top experts on Xuanyuan's side. Shenyuan, Xiannu of the Ninth Heaven, Taoist Randang, Yinglong, and a series of quasi-saint experts joined forces to kill Qiyu. The result could be imagined. Even though Qiyu's combat strength was unparalleled, facing the joint attack of so many existences of the same realm as him, he could not avoid being defeated and captured. That's right, Qiyu was suppressed and captured alive by everyone. Originally, Qiyu had the chance to self-destruct. However, the scene of ancestral which self-destructing had really shocked everyone. Therefore, before Wu Shisan entered the cycle of reincarnation, Hutu had restricted him so that he could not self-destruct. And this became the main reason why Qiyu was captured. Imagine, at the critical moment when Qiyu wanted to self-destruct and end all of this, he suddenly realized that he could not do it. That moment of shock and absent-mindedness became his biggest flaw. Suddenly losing his mind during the life and death battle was the main reason why Qiyu was captured. Fellow Taoist, what do you mean by this? Just as Qiyu was captured, Xing Tian said coldly to the peerless figure from the Seven Stars continent in the void. At this moment, Xing Tian was very angry. As he spoke, the violent aura around him could not help but pour out and suppress the other party. However, the other party was obviously not a good person. Just as Xing Tian's berserk aura was about to reach him, a mysterious aura suddenly rose from the body of the exceptional being from the Seven Stars continent and neutralized the aura that was bearing down on him. This was the ability to turn everything into void. It was because of this that Xing Tian was afraid and resisted the urge to attack and talked to the other party. Otherwise, with Xing Tian's bad temper, he would have already killed the other party. Ha ha! Fellow Taoist Xing Tian, what do you think I mean? The matters of the human race will be settled by the human race themselves. Why do you, an outsider, have to interfere? The peerless figure from the Seven Stars continent laughed and comforted Xing Tian. Humph, I'm only here to save Qiyu. I have no intention of interfering in the affairs of the human race. Qiyu has the potential of an ancestral wizard. He must not be lost to the human race. With a cold snort, Xing Tian explained. Just now, when he saw that Qiyu had been captured, he rushed over in a hurry to try to save Qiyu. However, he did not expect that halfway through, he would be blocked by Qiyu's other teacher, a peerless figure from the Seven Stars continent. It was also at this moment that Xing Tian realized that he had misjudged. That person who usually did not show his strength was actually so powerful that he was not weaker than him at all. In fact, he was even stronger than him. That was very terrifying. There were not many such people in the human race. Other than Feng Zichen in ancient times, only Fuxi and Shennong in the human race had such powerful strength. Then, which one of the 3 people was he? Since fellow Taoist knows Qiyu's identity, why don't you ask the Lady of Earth for her opinion? If Qiyu is really in danger, why wouldn't the Lady of Earth take action? Just as Xing Tian was feeling puzzled, he heard the person say slowly, "What? This?" Hearing this, Xing Tian could not help but become a little bewildered. That's right. With the strength of the ancestral wizard of Earth, everything that happened here naturally could not be hidden from him. But even so, the ancestral wizard of Earth still did not make a move. Didn't that mean that everything was under the control of the ancestral wizard of Earth? Thinking of this, Xing Tian felt a little relieved. He felt that he was worried for nothing. The ancestral wizard of Earth was not in a hurry. Why was he in a hurry? However, after being relieved, Xing Tian could not help but have greater doubts in his heart. Who was this person? He even knew Qi Yu's true identity? Could it be? With a thought, a bold idea appeared in Xing Tian's heart. You are. Xing Tian suddenly raised his head and was about to call out the other party's identity. However, in front of him, the person had already disappeared without a trace, leaving only an empty void. Zichen clan. At this moment, Xing Tian finally spat out a name in a discouraged manner. He suspected that the person in front of him was Feng Zichen. Only he would know so much about the Magi. Is it really you? Magi Pangu, the Zichen clan. After muttering silently, Xing Tian turned his head and rushed to the nether realm. He wanted to confirm his guess from the Lady of Earth. Tisk, TSK, TSK. Was I still recognized? As expected of my good friend. Just after Xing Tian left, the peerless figure from the Seven Stars continent. Oh no, it should be Feng Zichen, leisurely walked out of the void. He looked in the direction where Xing Tian left and sighed. That's right. The peerless figure from the Seven Stars continent. It was Feng Zichen. In this world, who else but Feng Zichen had achievements that no one else could surpass on the path of gods and demons? And who else could be comparable to the ancestral wizard? No matter what, Qi Yu was the reincarnation of Wuxia, and his status was extremely noble. Who in the human race was qualified to be his teacher? Fuxi had descended into the world, and the Grand Pure One had personally accepted him as a disciple. Even if Wu Shisan's status was not as high as Fuxi's, it was not far away. In this case, he could not casually find someone to teach Qi Yu. Otherwise, if it was not done properly, it would bring shame to the Magi. At that time, no matter how good his relationship with Feng Zichen was, the Lady of Earth would not be satisfied and would definitely not let him go. It would even ruin the relationship between the two clans. Chapter 625. Based on the above points, Feng Zichen split out an incarnation and used the name of a peerless figure of the Seven Stars continent to personally teach Qi Yu. After all, Feng Zichen also had the name of a wizard. It was the most suitable for him to teach Qi Yu. A wizard was the master of the wizard race. Sigh. I'm born to work. Shaking his head and sighing, Feng Zichen disappeared into the void. Next, he would be busy. Back then, in order to get Goddess Hutu to agree to let Wu Shisan reincarnate into the human race, Feng Zichen had promised to give Wu Shisan a great opportunity to help him achieve the Tao. Now, with Qi Yu's defeat and capture by Shenyuan, it was time for him to fulfill his promise. The ancestral land of the human race, in front of the Tai Temple, 5 thick divine chains of order stretched out from the void and firmly locked Qi Yu's limbs, fixing him in the void and preventing him from coming into contact with the earth. Standing on the earth, the power of the wizard race could be said to be endless. As the leader of the wizard race, Qi Yu had obviously inherited this. If he came into contact with the earth, he might be able to escape. Therefore, everyone locked him in the void to prevent Qi Yu from obtaining power from the earth. The purpose of everyone locking Qi Yu here was to execute him in public. To execute the punishment of being dismembered by 5 horses. Qi Yu's actions were to fight for the status of the mutants, but in reality he was dividing the human race. Therefore, Shenyuan gave him retribution and dismembered him. Those who divided the human race should be dismembered. Shenyuan, I don't accept this. You tricked me. You won with an unfair advantage. Qi Yu was still unconvinced as he was locked in the void by the divine chains of order. In his opinion, Shenyuan was far from his match. If he hadn't used tricks, how could he have defeated him, or even captured him alive? Therefore, he was not convinced. You still don't know that you're about to die. Execute. Shenyuan snorted coldly and ignored Qiyu. Instead, he ordered coldly, "Yes, your majesty." As soon as Shenyuan gave the order, 5 people stepped forward to accept it. They were all experts from the 5 Xiantian races, and each of them had the same cultivation base as Daluo Jingxian. Without further ado, the 5 of them took out 5 innate divine chains and placed them around Qi Yu's neck and limbs. Ha! After doing this, the 5 of them took a deep breath and shouted. They pulled the innate divine chains in their hands with all their might and headed in the opposite direction of Qi Yu. As Daluo Jingxian, one of the innate 5 Daluo Jingxian, one could easily imagine the strength of these 5 people. Even if a greater thousand world was placed in front of them without any defense and allowed to be pulled, it would be pulled apart by them. Therefore, when the 5 of them pulled at the innate divine chains in their hands with all their might, Qi Yu's body was pulled straight in an instant. It stood upright in the void. However, that was all. After Qi Yu's body was pulled straight, no matter how hard the 5 of them tried, they couldn't take another step forward. Qi Yu's body was too strong. It was far from what they could destroy. Ha ha! Shenyuan, you think you can tear my body apart with just them? You're underestimating me. Come back. In the void, Qi Yu looked at the 5 people who were struggling to pull the innate divine chains in their hands and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then, with a loud shout, he exerted all his strength and stretched out his limbs, forcefully pulling the 5 of them back. Bang! 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 Caught off guard, the 5 people were pulled down by Qi Yu on the spot. Ha ha! Looking at the miserable state of the 5 people, Qi Yu couldn't help but laugh out loud. He didn't think that Shenyuan had the ability to kill him. He knew his own situation very well. Qi Yu's body had been baptized by the essence blood of the ancestral witch. In addition, his comprehension of the path of gods and demons had made his body immortal. If one wanted to destroy his body, they would either use a primordial treasure or spend a lot of time using the power of time to destroy it. And these 2 points, with the current situation of the human race, it was very difficult to do. Humph! Qi Yu, you're so arrogant. Let's see how the poor Wei comes to kill you. Besides Shenyuan, Taoist Randang couldn't help but scold Qi Yu when he saw that a prisoner like Qi Yu dared to be so arrogant. At the same time, he also took out his lifelong spiritual treasure, the high-grade primordial spiritual treasure, the universal ruler, and attacked Qi Yu in an attempt to kill him. Boom! A ruler surrounded by clear light flew out from Taoist Randang's hand and turned into a huge universal world that pressed down on Qi Yu. A vast world fell down and smashed onto Qi Yu's body. One could imagine the power that erupted. On the spot, Qi Yu let out a loud wail. Pain, it was too painful. But that was it. Apart from the pain, the attack of the universal ruler did not cause any harm to Qi Yu. Boom! 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 The universal ruler smashed down again and again, causing Qi Yu to roar angrily. However, his aura did not weaken at all. After a while, Taoist Randang could not help but feel a little tired because he had continuously activated the universal ruler with all his might. He then put away his Dharma treasure with a resentful expression. At this moment, without the universal ruler blocking him, Qi Yu appeared in front of everyone again. Yes, compared to before, there was not much change. Under Taoist Randang's crazy attacks, Qi Yu was not injured at all. This time, Taoist Randang was really embarrassed. His words were beautiful previously, but the result? Ahem! Your Majesty, Qi Yu's body has been baptized by the blood essence of the Magus and has reached the indestructible realm. I'm afraid it's difficult to destroy it with ordinary methods. In order to hide his embarrassment, Taoist Randang first coughed a few times before explaining to Shenyuan. Boom! 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 Just as Taoist Randang was speaking, a few mighty figures who did not believe in evil used their own methods and attacked Qi Yu. The result was the same as before. It was useless. Haha! Trash! A bunch of trash. You want to kill me with just you? Dream on. Even though he was trapped in everyone's divine abilities, Qi Yu still had the mood to mock them. You Everyone was embarrassed when they heard that. However, everything that had happened just now proved that Qi Yu was telling the truth. For a moment, everyone felt aggrieved. Qi Yu, don't be arrogant. Watch me kill you. Shenyuan's sword. Slash. Seeing how arrogant Qi Yu was, Shenyuan could not help but be a little angry. He raised the Shenyuan sword and slashed at Qi Yu. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 5 sword lights shot out from the Shenyuan sword and slashed at Qi Yu's neck and limbs. It was strange that Qi Yu's body, which no one could hurt before, was as fragile as tofu under the 5 sword lights. It was easily cut by the sword lights. In the blink of an eye, Qi Yu's head and limbs were separated from his body. His whole body was divided into 6 parts. This was not surprising. The predecessor of the Shenyuan sword was the Wu-killing sword that Dijun had specially refined to deal with the ancestor of sorcery. The power of this sword could easily break the body of the ancestor of sorcery, let alone Qi Yu's body. It was his nemesis. How could it be? Even though his body was divided into 6 parts, Qi Yu still did not die. He just looked at his split body in a daze, his eyes full of disbelief. His almost indestructible body was so easily cut down by someone. He's not dead? Just when Qi Yu was in a daze, he heard Xuanyuan's surprised voice. Guards, suppress Qi Yu's body in the 5 lakes and 4 seas so that it can never be gathered. Then, before Qi Yu could react, Xuanyuan's majestic voice continued. Yes. After that, Qi Yu heard someone take the order and leave with his broken body. After that, Qi Yu's consciousness fell into a deep sleep, and he had no idea what happened next. Today, I will use the power of the 6 forces to refine your broken body. When you break out of the seal in the future, you will have the confidence to become a primordial chaos Dalio Jinxian. After everyone had suppressed Qiu's body parts, Feng Zichen appeared silently. He performed a supreme grand superpower to draw in the innate 6 directions force and infused it into the 6 parts of Qiu's body. This tribulation was also a kind of opportunity for Qi Yu. As the saying goes, there can be no construction without destruction. Although Qi Yu's body was divided into 6 parts, Feng Zichen drew the power of the 6 forces for him to refine his body. In this way, when Qi Yu's body was reunited in the future, he could use the power of the 6 forces to break through to the realm of primordial Dalio Jinxian. This was a great opportunity. It was just that the price he had to pay was a little high. However, this price was nothing compared to becoming a primordial Dalio Jinxian. After arranging everything, Feng Zichen left. As for when Qi Yu's body would be reunited, that was a matter of the witch race. It had nothing to do with him, because Qi Yu was no longer the Qi Yu of the human race, but Wu Shisan of the witch race. From the moment Qi Yu was dismembered by Shenyuan, his fate with the human race was over. With the defeat of the Jili tribe and the death of Qi Yu, Shenyuan finally unified the human race and integrated all the forces of the human race. It was also at this time that Shenyuan led the human army and began to conquer the 10,000 races. He was taking revenge. The 10,000 races secretly helped the mutants and tried to split the human race. As the human emperor, how could Shenyuan let them go so easily? Naturally, he had to teach the 10,000 races a lesson and weaken their strength. Therefore, Shenyuan led the human army to sweep through the 10,000 races in the name of cleaning up the traitors. The 10,000 races were naturally dissatisfied with this. However, because they were in the wrong and the human race was too powerful to resist, they all came to surrender with compensation. What followed was a series of wrangling. It was impossible to wipe out the 10,000 races in one fell swoop. Shenyuan naturally knew this. Therefore, his purpose was not to destroy the 10,000 races, but to torture them and consume their strength. This time, even if he couldn't destroy the 10,000 races, he would hurt them so that he could clear the obstacles for future generations. This was Xuanyuan's purpose, and this had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. He believed that with Xuanyuan's means he could handle all of this. At this moment, Feng Zichen was dealing with another matter. Oh, escaped? Under your siege, the person escaped? In the Ziwei Heavenly Palace, Feng Zichen looked at Zhen Yuanzi in disbelief, as if he couldn't believe what he had said. Zhen Yuanzi had come to tell him about the identity of the mysterious person. After everyone's hard work, they finally confirmed the identity of the person. It was Taoist Mu Xian, one of the 3,000 visitors of the Purple Cloud Palace. This person was the manifestation of the innate wood origin. His achievements in the innate wood element were not much worse than Gomang's. As an innate god born from the innate wood origin, Taoist Mu Xian had always given people the impression that he was kind-hearted and loved life the most. According to this, he shouldn't have done anything to destroy the untainted world. However, after repeated confirmation by everyone, it was indeed him. This made it difficult for everyone to accept. How could such a good person suddenly become a great demon that could destroy the heavens and the earth? With curiosity, everyone went to explore Taoist Mu Xian's mental journey, trying to find the reason for his change. When a group of great divine abilities joined forces, the power that erupted was undoubtedly astonishing. They were the incarnations of the Great Path, the favorites of heaven and earth. Under their joint efforts, the origin of heaven and earth would be alarmed, and even saints would have to retreat. From this, one could see how powerful they were. Therefore, under their joint efforts, they really found some clues. The change of Taoist Mu Xian. It was related to the demon god of chaos who had possessed him. At that time, the demon god of chaos had failed to possess Taoist Mu Xian. Seeing that he was about to be swallowed by Taoist Mu Xian, he was extremely unwilling and made the demon god of chaos do something shocking. He used all his strength to integrate his remnant spirit into Taoist Mu Xian's innate indestructible true spirit. Although this greatly increased Taoist Mu Xian's strength, it also made him under the influence of the remnant spirit of the demon god of chaos all the time. Because of this, Taoist Mu Xian's temperament changed greatly, and he had the idea of destroying the untainted world and refining the Hongmeng purple qi to become a saint. As for the demon god of chaos, he felt that having a saint on his side would be helpful to his future plans, so he helped him. The previous world-destroying action was because of this. After finding the reason for Taoist Mu Xian's depravity, everyone felt pity in their hearts. But they also knew that he couldn't be left alive. If a person who knew the details of the untainted world stood on the opposite side of the untainted world, the consequences would undoubtedly be terrible. Thinking of this, everyone was more diligent in finding the whereabouts of Taoist Mu Xian. With the joint efforts of everyone, they soon found the whereabouts of Taoist Mu Xian. At that time, Taoist Mu Xian had just been resurrected, and before he had time to look around, he was surrounded by a group of great magicians. Logically speaking, a powerless great ability user would naturally be captured without being able to put up any resistance when faced with several dozen great ability users who were at their peak. However, the truth was often unexpected. Chapter 626. He escaped. Taoist Mu Xian escaped. Under the siege of a group of powerful figures, Taoist Mu Xian escaped calmly. This was the reason why Feng Zichen was shocked. A group of ferocious tigers surrounding a sheep, and the sheep even managed to escape. Wasn't this a joke? How could the flying dragon lose? Taoist Zhen Yuanzi, what's going on? Extremely surprised, Feng Zichen asked Zhen Yuanzi directly. Alas! It's also poor Wei's fault for being careless. I didn't expect Taoist Mu Xian to have the congenital Taoist talisman refined by my teacher in the past. This gave him a chance to escape. At this point, Zhen Yuanzi sighed with emotion. Obviously, this result was also beyond his expectations. Before the incident, no one would have thought that Taoist Mu Xian would have a chance to escape. The congenital Taoist talisman refined by the Taoist ancestor? No, when did the Taoist ancestor refine the congenital Taoist talisman? Why haven't I heard of it? Moreover, why would the congenital Taoist talisman refined by the Taoist ancestor appear in the hands of Taoist Mu Xian? Hearing this, Feng Zichen became more and more puzzled. Why had he never heard of the congenital Taoist talisman refined by the Taoist ancestor, and had never seen anyone use it? Such a treasure. He shouldn't be unknown to the public. Must be a supreme treasure that everyone was fighting for. He should have heard of it. It's normal that your majesty doesn't know about this. In fact, not many people in the entire untainted land know about this. Even poor Wei didn't know about it before Taoist Mu Xian took out the congenital Taoist talisman refined by my teacher. Shaking his head, Zhen Yuanzi said helplessly. He really didn't know that the Taoist ancestor refined the congenital Taoist talisman. Oh, why is that? It was about the treasure refined by the Taoist ancestor, so Feng Zichen couldn't help but be curious. Therefore, he continued to ask. Back then, after the 3 sermons in the Purple Cloud Palace, my teacher left an opportunity for poor Wei and the others on the treasure-snatching rock. It could be said that our master-disciple relationship was fulfilled. Countless innate treasures are listed on the treasure-snatching rock. Many of them are connate numinous treasures that teacher collected when he traveled through the primordial world. Some of them are connate treasures with special functions that master forged in his spare time. These Xiantian treasures are extremely rare, and their abilities are even more bizarre. They are hidden among the numerous innate spiritual treasures, and only those with great opportunities can obtain them. The connate Tao talisman in Taoist Mu Xian's hand belongs to this type of special treasure. A treasure like this is extremely secretive. If its owner didn't take the initiative to reveal it, others would absolutely be unable to detect it in the slightest. And who would publicize the fact that they obtained such a treasure? Therefore, no one knew that Taoist Mu Xian had obtained the innate Taoist talisman made by the Taoist ancestor, and no one knew that innate Taoist talismans existed in this world. If Taoist Mu Xian hadn't used this talisman in order to escape, I'm afraid this news would have been buried forever. At this point, Zhen Yuanzi's tone was laced with envy. The power of the innate Taoist talisman made by the Taoist ancestor must be quite terrifying. It was no exaggeration to say that with this talisman, it was equivalent to having a second life. Who wouldn't envy it? At least, Zhen Yuanzi couldn't. Even Feng Zichen was a little tempted after hearing this. But what he was more worried about was that since there was the first innate Taoist talisman made by the Taoist ancestor, would there be a second or third one? Moreover, even a treasure like the innate Taoist talisman had appeared. Who knew what other strange treasures would appear next? Thinking of this, Feng Zichen couldn't help but have a headache. The water in the primordial world was getting deeper and deeper. He was also careless. He had never thought that the legendary treasure-snatching rock, in addition to numerous connate numinous treasures, there were also some gadgets made by the Taoist ancestor. This was a very speechless. The Taoist ancestor really knew how to play. Alas! Sighing in his heart, Feng Zichen understood that in the future, he would have to reevaluate the powerful divines in the primordial world. Even Taoist Mu Xian had the innate Taoist talisman made by the Taoist ancestor. Who knew what other people had in their hands? Maybe someone had an offensive jade talisman made by the Taoist ancestor. That would be exciting. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen comforted Zhen Yuanzi. Don't worry. I see. You can't blame the others for this. Who would have thought that Taoist Mu Xian had the innate Taoist talisman left by the Taoist ancestor? Fortunately, Taoist Mu Xian used the innate Taoist talisman to escape, instead of fighting desperately with you. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Feng Zichen didn't know the specific power of the innate Taoist talisman. But since it had something to do with Taoist Hongjun, its power couldn't be underestimated. From the fact that Taoist Mu Xian could easily escape from the encirclement of many powerful divines by relying on it, it could be seen that the power of the innate Taoist talisman was definitely extremely powerful. If Taoist Mu Xian didn't use this Taoist talisman to escape but used it to attack the powerful divines, the power of the innate Taoist talisman might explode. If they were caught off guard, one or two of them would really die completely. This time, the experience of the powerful divines was really exciting. Who says so? Fortunately, poor Wei and the others went with many people. Otherwise, if one or two of them went alone, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to come back. Thinking of the terrible consequences, even Zhen Yuanzi couldn't help but feel a little scared. This operation, in general, it was really unlucky. When everyone worked together, it should have been a sure thing, but there was an accident. Not only did it embarrass them, but they almost lost their lives. Wasn't that unlucky? Brother Jin Yuanzi. There's something I'd like to discuss with you all. I hope you can pass on my message. After a moment of silence, Feng Zichen suddenly said to Jin Yuanzi with a serious face, "What's the matter, Your Majesty? I'll definitely relay it to my fellow Taoists." Seeing Feng Zichen's serious face, Jin Yuanzi also replied with a serious face, "Brother, the failure to kill Taoist Mu Xian will definitely intensify his determination to turn to the chaos demonic god. In the future, the untainted land will be in danger. For this reason, I plan to summon all the Daluo Jingxian in the untainted land and persuade them to leave the untainted land voluntarily to reduce the pressure on the untainted land. If there are no more Daluo Jingxian in the untainted land, no matter how powerful Taoist Mu Xian is, he can't provoke disputes in the untainted land. In this way, the untainted land will undoubtedly be much safer than before." Speaking of this, Feng Zichen paused, changed the topic, and asked Jin Yuanzi earnestly, "If I want to accomplish this, I will undoubtedly need the help of all of you. Thus, Ziwei sincerely requests that all of you lend me a hand. The fewer top forces in the untainted land, the safer the untainted land would be." There was nothing wrong with this. If the untainted land was full of Tai Jingxian, it would be difficult to shake the untainted land even if they all self-destructed. But if Daluo Jingxian, Sage to Be, and powerful mediums self-destructed, it would be different. It would really shake the foundation of the untainted land. In order to prevent this from happening, Feng Zichen took this opportunity to try to move all the masters above Daluo Jingxian in the untainted land away. After hearing Feng Zichen's words, Jin Yuanzi didn't immediately agree. He was a little hesitant, because he saw through Feng Zichen's real purpose. Why would he need Jin Yuanzi's help just to move the Daluo Jingxian? With the strength of great Emperor Ziwei, who would dare to disobey an order from Daluo Jingxian in the untainted land? Did they really think that great Emperor Ziwei wouldn't kill? It was clearly something that great Emperor Ziwei could do easily. So why would he ask for Jin Yuanzi's help? Obviously, his order wasn't targeted at Daluo Jingxian, but at the powerful mediums of the untainted land. When it came to the unstable factors of the untainted land, of course, it was the powerful mediums. Throughout the several destructive catastrophes that the untainted land had experienced, they were all caused by the powerful mediums. Therefore, as long as all the powerful mediums of the untainted land left the untainted land would be countless times safer than before, even if it wasn't 100% safe. As for the remaining Daluo Jingxian, what could they do? Not to mention Feng Zichen, any powerful mediums could kill them all with a flip of their palm. However, Daluo Jingxian was easy to deal with, but the powerful mediums were not. There was no doubt that they belonged to the top of the untainted land and were one of the rulers of the untainted land. They were the incarnations of the will of the Great Path. They were incomparably ancient and powerful, and they had countless trump cards. Even if the saints had strength that far surpassed them, they wouldn't be willing to fall out with them easily. The power they had was enough to destroy the untainted land. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be to get them to leave the untainted land. It was precisely because of this that Feng Zichen had scruples and turned to Jin Yuanzi for help. Speaking of which, if it weren't for the failure to kill Taoist Mu Xian this time, Feng Zichen wouldn't have dared to propose such a bold idea. The powerful mediums had an unshirkable responsibility for the failure to kill Taoist Mu Xian. Therefore, Feng Zichen had a high chance of implementing this plan with this reason. This was a rare opportunity. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know how long he would have to wait for the next one. Therefore, regardless of whether it was successful or not, Feng Zichen had to give it a try. Moreover, he might not necessarily fail. Jin Yuanzi was the key to the success of this plan. As long as he could get his help, the plan would have a 60 to 70% chance of success. As for whether Jin Yuanzi would agree or not, Feng Zichen wasn't worried at all. Zhen Yuanzi's character could be imagined as he was able to become good friends with Ancestor Red Cloud. Moreover, in order to stop the spread of the untainted land in the west, Jin Yuanzi went to the border between the east and the west alone and set up a Taoist right there. He had blocked the untainted land for countless years. Therefore, Jin Yuanzi was someone who cared about the untainted land. Feng Zichen persuaded him with the safety of the untainted land. With Jin Yuanzi's character, it was hard for him to refuse. This was how a gentleman could be taken advantage of. Although it was shameless, it was effective. Forget it. For the safety of the untainted land, the poor Wei will sacrifice my face to persuade my old friends to leave the untainted land. Zhen Yuanzi hesitated for a moment before he gritted his teeth and said, "This was a job that would offend people. Asking people to move for no reason, even if the reason was justified, would be disliked by people." This time, Zhen Yuanzi was really taking a huge risk. Ziwei is here to treat all living beings in the untainted land. Thank you for your righteousness. After Zhen Yuanzi agreed, Feng Zichen hurriedly stood up and bowed to him to thank him for his righteous action today. This time, Ziwei owes you a favor. If you need my help in the future, I will do my best to help. Feng Zichen thought for a while and felt that words of gratitude were far less direct than actions. Therefore, he directly promised Jin Yuanzi. Once he said this, it meant that in the future, Feng Zichen would do his best for Jin Yuanzi. One had to know that, with Feng Zichen's strength, he was not inferior to any saint. With his full strength, he could even suppress a primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. From this, one could see the weight of his promise this time. In normal times, this was a result that even a supreme-grade primordial spirit treasure could not exchange for. "Ha ha! Your Majesty, you're exaggerating. There's no time to lose. The poor Wei will go now." With a chuckle, Jin Yuanzi said goodbye to Feng Zichen and turned to leave the Ziwei Heavenly Palace. Oh! It was not difficult to persuade the great masters to leave the untainted land. As long as the great masters ranked at the top of the untainted land all agreed, the remaining great masters would be easy to deal with. However, it wasn't a simple matter to get the agreement of the top-ranked great divinities. Fortunately, Feng Zichen would not let Jin Yuanzi fight alone. While he asked Fushi to accompany Jin Yuanzi to persuade the great masters, he tried to contact the saints who were far away in outer space. There had to be a leader to move out of the untainted land, and this leader had to be important. Only then would he be able to set an example. And this candidate in the untainted land, could there be a more suitable candidate than the saint? The saint was the spokesperson of the heavenly Tao in the untainted land. Their every move represented the will of the heavens. If the saint was the first to leave the untainted land, it would mean that it was the will of the heavens. When the other great masters saw this, their resistance would not be so strong. Who would dare to go against the will of the heavens? The saints had no reason to disagree with this matter that concerned the safety of the untainted land. Even if they did not agree, the heavenly Tao would not force them to agree. Therefore, Feng Zichen was not worried that the saints would refuse at all. Oh! Rumble! On this day, the untainted land, which had been peaceful for many years, suddenly, there was a huge commotion, and the entire earth was shaking. Such a strange situation naturally attracted the attention of countless people. Therefore, everyone looked in the direction of the sound. But then they were shocked. As far as the eye could see, there were many unbelievable scenes. They saw the towering Kunlun Mountain, where the Eastern ancestral bloodline was located. The Taoist field of Heavenly Lord Yuanshi suddenly trembled violently, emitting endless rays of light, as if it was about to rise from the ground. And the change was not only that. Chapter 6:27. While Mount Kunlun was changing, the other Saint Dojos, such as Mount Shouyang, Golden Ao Island, and Mount Meru were also changing. Endless Tao patterns that were emitting divine light rose from their bodies, illuminating the entire primordial world. It was extremely bright. What's going on? Are the saints coming back? The sudden change in the Saint Dojos confused all living beings in the primordial world. They could only think that it was a phenomenon that was spontaneously produced by the Saint Dojos because the saints were about to return from outer space. However, while the living beings did not understand the reason, the great divines seemed to have vaguely understood something. They're trying to isolate the world. Thinking about Great Emperor Ziwei's plan, the great divines made a guess. The subsequent actions of the saints' Taoist temples undoubtedly confirmed their guesses. Rumble. Soon after the saint dojos emitted the bright divine light, they began to slowly retract their power. Almost visible to the naked eye, the rising divine light and Tao patterns began to rapidly retract and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. This change did not mark the end of the phenomenon, but it meant that the saint dojos were trying their best to retract their power and store it in their bodies to erupt with stronger waves. Bang! When the power was accumulated to the limit, there was a bang, and several extremely terrifying waves gushed out from the saint dojos. Whoosh! The power exploded like fireworks, giving rise to countless mysterious runes that were embedded in the void. They were densely packed and spread around the sages' dojos. At this moment, all living beings in the primordial world looked at the saint dojos and realized that the supreme holy land that used to be shrouded by the clear Saint Chi could not be seen clearly today. Because, in the void, countless mysterious runes were densely packed. They were dazzling and mysterious as they emitted divine light. Like a net, they completely enveloped the void where the sages' dojos were located, making it impossible for anyone to see them clearly. Just as everyone was puzzled, another change occurred. Boom! 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 In the distant chaos outside the heavens, there were suddenly 4 supreme dermic powers that broke through layers of the void and rushed over, landing in the 4 saint dojos. The 5 saints of the 3 pure ones, Zhu and Ti, made their move. As for why Her Highness Nuwa did not make a move, that was because after Empress Nuwa became a saint, she directly moved the dojo to the chaos outside the heavens, the Jinsho heaven that she had created herself. Therefore, Empress Nuwa did not have a Taoist temple in the great desolate world. It was precisely because of this that the retreat of the great mystical abilities from the primordial world had nothing to do with him. After all, he was no longer in the primordial world. A saint's attack was naturally extraordinary. Just as the 4 streams of dermic powers were about to reach the mysterious rune, they suddenly collapsed and turned into strands of connate origin energy that merged with the mysterious rune. With the help of the saint's power, the power of the mysterious rune suddenly skyrocketed. It became more and more resplendent, and an endless mysterious aura bloomed. In just an instant, it connected with the sky. Whoosh! Brilliant light screens appeared outside the dojos of the saints, isolating them from the desolation realm. Whoosh, whoosh! After the light screen flickered for a moment, it disappeared into the void. The towering Kunlun mountain and the other saints' dojos reappeared in front of everyone's eyes. After that, the primordial world returned to peace, as if everything that had happened just now was an illusion. However, all living beings knew that everything was different. Although the saint's dojo was still standing there, it was as if there was a layer of gauze between it and the crowd, making it ethereal. The void where they were located had been completely separated from the primordial world under the isolation of the mysterious rune. In other words, the saint's dojo could be said to be independent of the world. Their position seemed to have not moved, but in fact, they were separated from all living beings by endless time and space. A cultivator whose cultivation had not reached the level of Dalio Jinxian, even if the Kunlun mountain was right in front of him, he would not be able to get close to the Kunlun mountain even if he spent his entire life. The world where they were located was completely different. The Kunlun mountain and the other saints' dojos had become unreachable in the eyes of all living beings. That was how it should be. After all, the level they were at, it was not something that all living beings should come into contact with. Oh, the saints' actions today could be said to have a great impact on the primordial world. At the very least, the powerful beings who had been hesitating about whether to evacuate the primordial world had already made up their minds. Sigh! It's the will of the heavens. Let's leave. After making up their minds, the group of powerful beings acted straightforwardly. Without any hesitation, they cut off the connection between their dojos and the primordial world. Just like the saints' dojo, they were completely isolated from the primordial world. It was also from that day onwards that the phenomena of the primordial world were endless. Almost every year, powerful beings would leave the primordial world with their dojos. This situation lasted for tens of thousands of years. It was only when the living beings of the primordial world were about to get used to it that it gradually decreased and even disappeared. Oh! After the saint led the dojos and left the primordial world, all the powerful beings of the primordial world finally left the primordial world after a period of time. For a moment, the primordial world fell silent. Without the suppression of the powerful beings, the living beings of the primordial world felt as if a huge rock had disappeared from their hearts. They were completely relaxed and their entire bodies were clear. Even the laws of heaven and earth became more active after the great divine ability masters left. It was as if they had been suppressed when the powerful beings were around. Now that they had finally relaxed, they wanted to be active as much as they could. In fact, that was indeed the case. The strength of the powerful beings was really too strong. They had almost reached the end of the great Tao. Therefore, even if they had no intention of suppressing the laws of heaven and earth, their great Tao was there. That powerful aura naturally affected the laws of heaven and earth and interfered with their normal operation. The strong were enough to change the world. It was not a joke. It really existed. Obviously, the powerful beings had this ability. The influence of one or two powerful beings on the laws of heaven and earth might be limited. However, when hundreds or even thousands of powerful beings appeared in the primordial world at the same time, their influence on the laws of heaven and earth could be imagined. It could be said that all living beings in the primordial world were living under the shadow of the great Tao of the powerful beings. That was obviously not a good thing for all living beings. If they could not get rid of the shadow of others in the future, how could they attain the Tao? That was also one of the reasons why there were fewer and fewer experts in the primordial world. Therefore, the departure of the powerful beings was also a good thing for all living beings in the primordial world. At the very least, without the suppression of the great Tao of the powerful beings, it would be much easier for all living beings to cultivate than before. With the departure of the powerful beings, the laws of heaven and earth became more and more active. The primordial world welcomed a long-awaited golden age of cultivation. Everyone was immersed in cultivation, and this, for Feng Zichen, it was just the beginning. Although the powerful beings had evacuated the primordial world as a whole, it did not mean that they had completely cut off their connection with the primordial world. The boundless space-time that spanned across their dojos and the primordial world was obstructing the living beings of the primordial world, not them. With the ability of the powerful beings, they could completely ignore the endless space-time and directly interfere with the primordial world. The so-called evacuation of the primordial world only meant that their true bodies were not in the primordial world, but their power could still affect the primordial world. In other words, in fact, their so-called evacuation of the primordial world was only in the situation, not in fact. But what was the use of evacuating in the situation? Therefore, the next step of Feng Zichen's plan was to promote the implementation of heaven and earth isolation. With the almost invincible luck of the human clan, he could forcefully cut off the passage between heaven and earth, causing heaven and earth to be no longer connected. At that time, any existence outside the primordial world who wanted to interfere with the primordial world would definitely be attacked by the luck of the human clan. At that time, the primordial world would be truly safe. After all, even the saints coveted the luck of the protagonists of heaven and earth and would not hesitate to throw away their dignity to fight for it. From this, it could be seen that the terrifying luck of the human clan was definitely not something that the powerful beings could contend with. The departure of the powerful beings had the greatest impact on the primordial world. It could be said that the human clan was the one that had the greatest impact on the primordial world. With the support of the human clan's luck, Xuanyuan's strength had reached the level of half-step primordial chaos, far surpassing the level of Shinnong's sage-to-be perfection. That's right. After this internal strife, the human clan had completely suppressed the myriad clans and gathered the luck of the myriad clans. It could be said that their luck had experienced an unprecedented increase. Under this influence, Xuanyuan's strength naturally rose as well. From the original realm of sage-to-be perfection, he had reached the realm of half-step primordial chaos. With such strength, in the era when the powerful beings left the primordial world en masse, he could definitely be called invincible. Yes. He was really invincible. The heavens and the earth did not count. With such an expert holding down the fort, who among the myriad clans would dare to act rashly? It was precisely because of this that the human clan entered a period of rapid development, and their strength soared exponentially. Of course, the reason for this outcome, it was all based on the situation of suppressing the myriad clans. In the past, although there were many resources in the primordial world, there were even more races in the primordial world. Everyone divided a little, and there wasn't much that they actually got. But now, the situation was completely different. As the human clan became stronger and stronger, the previous model was obviously no longer applicable. Now, more than half of the resources in the primordial world had entered the pockets of the human clan. None of the myriad clans dared to compete with them. After Shenyuan defeated Qiyu, in order to obtain the forgiveness of the human clan, the myriad clans began to pay tribute to the human clan. Just these tributes were a shocking amount of wealth, enough to cultivate a large number of experts for the human clan. It could be said that the myriad clans were using their own blood to support the human clan. In this way, it was difficult for the human clan not to be strong. Logically speaking, Shenyuan should be satisfied that the myriad clans had done so much. But in fact, Shenyuan was far from satisfied. He really wanted to take this opportunity to swallow the myriad clans in one fell swoop so that he could completely establish the supreme status of the human clan. But the reality made him extinguish this crazy idea. Although the myriad clans were no match for the might of the human clan, this did not mean that the myriad clans did not have the strength to fight against the human clan. If they really wanted to fight, the human clan might be able to destroy the myriad clans, but the price they would have to pay was definitely something that the current human clan could not bear. Perhaps the human clan would be unable to recover from this setback. Therefore, considering the consequences of doing so, Shenyuan had no choice but to suppress the thoughts in his heart and feign civility with the myriad clans. This situation lasted until the 950th year of the human emperor's calendar, which was also the 950th year of Xuanyuan's power, before there was a change. The 950th year of the human emperor's calendar had reached the end of the human emperor's rule. It was also at this time that the human emperor began to gradually put down the power in his hands and focused on cultivating the Tao. For this reason, human emperor Shenyuan specially issued a decree to invite the experts of the myriad clans to come to the human emperor's palace to discuss the Tao. Everyone could exchange what they needed to reach a higher realm. After receiving the order, the experts of the myriad clans did not dare to be negligent. They all set off for the human emperor's palace. At first, as the decree said, human emperor Shenyuan invited everyone over to discuss the Tao with his fellow Taoists. But as time passed, the atmosphere of the Tao discussion gradually changed. The reason was that during the discussion, human emperor Shenyuan had vaguely mentioned more than once that he was reluctant to part with the feelings of his subjects. He hoped that after he ascended to the heaven realm, everyone could leave with him. How could the experts of the myriad clans agree to this? Everyone had families and businesses. How could they abandon their families and businesses and follow human emperor Shenyuan to the heaven realm to start anew? Wasn't this a joke? Besides, if they really left, what would happen to their race? They were afraid that as soon as they left, the human race would swallow their race. Moreover, it was different from the primordial world that had undergone several changes, causing the number of experts to decrease. The heaven realm was where most of the top experts of the primordial world were gathered. With their strength, it was fine for them to dominate the primordial world. But once they reached the heaven realm, they were really nothing. There were many in the heaven realm who were stronger than them. There was a saying that it was better to be the head of a chicken than the back of a cow. Didn't they want to be the overlords of the primordial world? Why did they have to go to the heaven realm to be bullied? Due to the above reasons, the experts of the myriad clans were unwilling to leave the primordial world. As for the easier world, it gradually became unsuitable for Daluo Jinxian's life. The experts of the myriad clans expressed that they did not care at all. With the foundation of the myriad clans, it was impossible to contend against the easier world. However, it was still possible to support a few Daluo Jinxian. Therefore, They had the conditions to stay in the primordial world. Since that was the case, why should they leave? But if they didn't leave, how could they explain to human Emperor Shenyuan? After all, he had already hinted. They couldn't just ignore it, right? For a moment, the experts of the myriad clans were in a dilemma. Wait, ignore it. In a trance, the experts of the myriad clans thought of a solution. Just pretend to be stupid. Anyway, you, Shenyuan, didn't say it directly, so we'll pretend that we didn't hear your hint at all. Chapter 628. Wasn't it just pretending to be stupid? Who didn't know how to do that? With this thought in mind, the experts of the myriad races also did the same. After that, no matter how Emperor Shenyuan hinted, they all pretended not to understand. And regarding this, Shenyuan didn't show too much anger. His actions were originally a test. The reaction of the experts of the myriad races was completely within his expectations. If the experts of the myriad races agreed so easily, that would be a problem. Of course, this wasn't the only reason why Shenyuan wasn't angry. Now, with the strength of the human race, how could the experts of the myriad races disobey what he wanted to do? In other words, the reason why Shenyuan hinted to everyone was not to ask for their opinions, but to give them a heads up in advance so that they wouldn't be unprepared when they ascended to the heaven realm with him. As for whether the experts of the myriad races agreed or not, was that important? After all, the primordial world relied on strength to speak. The weak only needed to follow the rules of the strong. They didn't have much choice. Xuanyuan's fist was bigger and harder than the experts of the myriad races. The experts of the myriad races couldn't compare to him. Then they had to listen to Shenyuan. This was the sorrow of the weak. The fate of the myriad races was destined the moment Chiyu was defeated. They were destined to withdraw from the stage of the primordial world to make room for the human race. This was the will of heaven and the general trend. Anyone who disobeyed would be smashed to pieces by the surging momentum of the situation. The experts of the myriad races couldn't defeat Shenyuan, so they could only follow his rules. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to bear the price of breaking the rules. It was precisely because of this that Shenyuan wasn't in a hurry. Everything was already destined, so why should he be in a hurry? The pitiful experts of the myriad races were complacent because of Xuanyuan's concession, but they didn't notice the destined future at all. It was really sad. Just like that, under the perfunctory interaction between the two sides, time passed day by day. The human race would also welcome its first great emperor. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 years had passed. At this time, it had been 960,000 years since the human emperor Shenyuan took power. And the human emperor had only been in power for 1,000,000 years. In other words, there were still more than 40,000 years before Xuanyuan's merit would be complete. 960,000 years of the human emperor calendar, the era of Xuanyuan's rule, had finally reached the end of the Great Era. On this day, on the North Star, Feng Zichen suddenly opened his eyes. The time has come. It's time for the Motherf * King Human King to reincarnate as well. With a thought, Feng Zichen formed a hand seal and pointed at the void. Suddenly, boundless Tao patterns separated from Feng Zichen's fingertips. They were densely packed and embedded in the void, slowly opening a passage. Rumble! There was a sudden clap of thunder, shaking the void. Streams of terrifying reincarnation power surged out from the passageway, distorting everything. That was Reincarnation Passage. After so many years, Feng Zichen's understanding of the path of reincarnation had deepened. In the blink of an eye, a reincarnation passage could be opened. On this point, compared to when he opened up the reincarnation passage, he had to rely on the authority of the 6 paths of reincarnation disc. It was many times stronger. Whoosh! Just as the reincarnation passage was formed, a dragon-shaped true spirit suddenly appeared at the origin of the North Star. The dragon-shaped true spirit disappeared in a flash. It was wrapped in an imperial purple chi and directly entered the reincarnation passage. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared. This scene meant that the first Motherf * King Human King had reincarnated. Rumble. On this day, the destiny of the human race shook, and the torch flame appeared automatically. It burned fiercely in the long river of destiny like the sun, blooming with bright light, illuminating all corners of the universe. Endless strange phenomena evolved, and it did not stop for years. At the same time, the dragon race, which had not moved for a long time, began to undergo inexplicable changes the moment the dragon-shaped true spirit entered the reincarnation passage. Rumble. Amidst a violent roar, the dragon race's destiny appeared without warning, stirring up the wind and clouds in the four seas. Roar, 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 for a time, above the four seas, because of the inexplicable appearance of the dragon race's destiny. A series of majestic dragon roars suddenly sounded. The sudden change caused the sea tribe to fall into a daze. They had no idea what had happened. As for the dragon emperor and the elders of the dragon race, when they saw this inexplicable change, they vaguely understood something. They silently appeared in the depths of the void, quietly observing the changes in the situation. Rumble. Just as the sea tribe was in a daze, the scene changed again. Endless dragon chi burst out from the void, forming a huge and glorious door in the sky above the four seas. Dragon Gate. The Dragon Gate of the dragon race. Under the situation where no one summoned it, the Dragon Gate appeared automatically, like the door of the great Tao, towering above the four seas, exuding endless majesty. Chi. In an instant, endless divine light burst out from the Dragon Gate. It was incomparably dazzling, illuminating the entire four seas. Whoosh! The divine light was dazzling and crystal clear. It was like a drizzle, like a stream of light, slowly falling from the void, sprinkling the entire four seas. Almost all the sea tribe was bathed in the dazzling divine light. This was a gift. The Dragon Gate's gift to the sea tribe was used to enhance their bloodline. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The divine light entered their bodies and continuously baptized the bodies of the sea tribe, purifying their bloodline, causing them to continuously transform into a true dragon. Although this transformation was far less intense than directly leaping over the Dragon Gate, it could save the sea tribe thousands of years of bitter cultivation and further enhance their bloodline. To the sea tribe, improving their bloodline was more important than improving their cultivation. Therefore, the appearance of the Dragon Gate this time was no less than a great opportunity for the sea tribe. Perhaps, after digesting what they had obtained this time, when they leaped over the Dragon Gate next time, they would undoubtedly be much more confident. The luck of the human race and the dragon race changed at the same time. It would be an insult to everyone's IQ if they said that there was no connection between the two. But what could they do if they knew that there was a connection? Those who were qualified to know the reason for all of this would not poke their nose into other people's business to avoid being involved in karma. And those who were not qualified to know would not poke their nose into other people's business. Because regardless of whether it was the human race or the dragon race, they were existences that they could not afford to offend. The strange phenomenon of the two races gradually disappeared after the birth of the imperial grandson Zhuanshu. The imperial grandson Zhuanshu, the ancient dragon race's dragon sovereign, was the reincarnation of the water dragon. He was the patriarch of the water dragon bloodline of the dragon race and the best of the 3 generations of the dragon race. His birth marked that the relationship between the dragon race and the human race had taken a step closer and truly become inseparable. One could see that, with the birth of the imperial grandson Zhuanshu, in the long river of fate, the 9-clawed divine dragon that represented the luck of the dragon race and the eternal torch that represented the luck of the human race gradually approached each other. A sparkling and translucent thread suddenly appeared and connected the luck of the two races together. It could be seen with the naked eye. Strands of luck flowed in the thread and flowed into each other's bodies, blending with each other to show the inseparable relationship between the two races. The imperial grandson Zhuanshu was extremely talented, and his cultivation talent was even more extraordinary. He was born less than 100 years ago, but he had already cultivated to the celestial immortal realm. He was even invincible among the younger generation of the myriad races. He was faintly known as the second Shenyuan. Human Emperor Shenyuan liked this grandson very much, so he brought him along and personally taught him. He faintly seemed to be grooming him as his successor. Of course, Xuanxu did not disappoint Shen Yuan. He used his outstanding ability to win the approval of the elders of the human race and the destiny of the human race, making him the legitimate successor of the human race. The primordial world did not count years. In the blink of an eye, 30,000 years had passed since Xuanxu was born. At this time, it was already the 990,000th year of the human emperor's calendar. At this time, human emperor Shen Yuan had already given up all the power in his hands and handed it all over to Xuanxu. In other words, although Xuanxu did not have the name of the human emperor, he already had the power of the human emperor. As for Xuanxu, after many years of training, he had already become a qualified emperor. Over the years, Shen Yuan had seen Xuanxu's performance and was very satisfied with him. It was also from this time that Shen Yuan was completely relieved and began to carry out his plan. In the 990,000th year of the human emperor's calendar, a huge change suddenly happened in the primordial world. Myriad races wanted to join forces to suppress the human emperor Shen Yuan. This move undoubtedly shocked all living beings in the primordial world. And the reason for all of this was all based on an order from Shen Yuan. It was in the last 10,000 years of Xuanyuan's power. This invincible emperor of Earth suddenly issued an order. Daluo Jingxian of the myriad races was ordered to go to the heaven realm with him in 10,000 years. It was this order which caused an uproar in the primordial world, and a hint of betrayal arose. Everything was fine. Who was willing to abandon their family and run to the heaven realm? In the past, it was fine to hide the hints and everyone could still pretend to be stupid. But now, Shen Yuan had directly made it clear, and the experts of the myriad races could not continue to pretend to be stupid. To go or not? They had to give the human emperor Shen Yuan an answer. In the beginning, the experts of the myriad races still had a glimmer of hope in their hearts, thinking that Shen Yuan would not be so ruthless. Therefore, they all went to the ancestral land of the human race to worship Shen Yuan, trying to use all kinds of reasons to refuse to go to the heaven realm. Unfortunately, no matter how reasonable and perfect the reasons they found, they could not move Shen Yuan. At this time, the experts of the myriad races already understood that the human emperor Shen Yuan was determined to take them all away. It was also the fault of the experts of the myriad races for going too far back then. For their own interests, they did not hesitate to provoke internal strife in the human race to oust Shen Yuan. It was precisely after experiencing this that Shen Yuan knew the harm of the experts of the myriad races, in order to not let his experience be repeated by the juniors. Shen Yuan had already sworn in his heart that he would take away all the experts of the myriad races at all costs so that he could clear the obstacles for the future generations. When Shennong ascended the throne, the experts of the myriad races were dissatisfied. When he ascended the throne, the experts of the myriad races were disdainful. These pierced Xuanyuan's heart deeply. At the same time, this also made him understand that the so-called submission of the myriad races was completely unreliable. The one that the myriad races respected and feared was him. Once he left, the faces of the myriad races would quickly change. This point, when Shennong and he ascended the throne, the myriad races had already shown it vividly. Therefore, this group of scourges had to be eliminated. Even at all costs, they had to be eliminated. Seeing that Xuanyuan's determination could not be shaken, the experts of the myriad races were naturally unwilling to go to the heaven realm. Therefore, after they returned to the myriad races, they all entered a state of preparation for battle, intending to fight to the death with Shen Yuan. The experts of the myriad races were able to cultivate to the realm of Daluo Jingxian and even the realm of Sage to be. Naturally, they did not lack bravery. Usually, the reason why they acted so weak and let Shen Yuan do whatever he wanted. That was because Xuanyuan's actions did not cross their bottom line. Therefore, they could endure it. But now, everything was different. The experts of the myriad races had been forced to a dead end by Shen Yuan. There was no way out. Therefore, of course, they had to fight to the death. The experts of the myriad races were ready to join forces and attack the human emperor Shen Yuan together. This was to express their determination to stay in the untainted land. But before they were ready, someone made a move first. The person who made a move was Great Witch Xing Tian, the #1 warrior of the ancient witch race, revealed his huge true body of the Great Witch. He waved the ganchi in his hand and brazenly charged into the ancestral land of the human race. Boom! 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 Great Witch Xing Tian took a step forward and crossed an infinite distance. In just a few steps, he had already arrived in front of the human emperor palace and Shenyuan. Shenyuan, you little brat, die! In front of the human emperor palace, Xing Tian swung down his axe, intending to split Shenyuan and the human emperor palace in half. The axe in Xing Tian's hand was transformed from a fragment of Pangu's axe. It had the power to split the sky. Even Dong Huang Tai would be injured if he was caught off guard by the axe, let alone Shenyuan. Therefore, if Xing Tian's axe really hit Shenyuan, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Great Witch Xing Tian, you are too presumptuous. The axe in Xing Tian's hand was transformed from a fragment of Pangu's axe. It had the power to split the sky. Even Dong Huang Tai would be injured if he was caught off guard by the axe, let alone Shenyuan. Therefore, if Xing Tian's axe really hit Shenyuan, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Great Witch Xing Tian, you are too presumptuous. The axe in Xing Tian's hand was transformed from a fragment of Pangu's axe. It had the power to split the sky. Even Dong Huang Tai would be injured if he was caught off guard by the axe, let alone Shenyuan. Therefore, if Xing Tian's axe really hit Shenyuan, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Great Witch Xing Tian, you are too presumptuous. The axe in Xing Tian's hand was transformed from a fragment of Pangu's axe. It had the power to split the sky. Even Dong Huang Tai would be injured if he was caught off guard by the axe, let alone Shenyuan. Therefore, if Xing Tian's axe really hit Shenyuan, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Great Witch Xing Tian, you are too presumptuous. The axe in Xing Tian's hand was transformed from a fragment of Pangu's axe. It had the power to split the sky. Even Dong Huang Tai would be injured if he was caught off guard by the axe, let alone Shenyuan. Therefore, if Xing Tian's axe really hit Shenyuan, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Great Witch Xing Tian, you are too presumptuous. Chapter 629. The current Xing Tian was not much weaker than the ancestral shaman back then. There were only a handful of people in the primordial world who could defeat him. With such powerful strength, it would not be a simple matter to help him break down and then rebuild, because his physical body was too strong. It had reached the level of a supreme-grade innate spirit treasure. Unless a primordial chaos expert or a primordial chaos expert came with a primordial chaos treasure, it was absolutely impossible to hurt him at all. Therefore, it was not a simple matter for Xing Tian to break and rebuild, because there were not many people in the primordial world who could do this. Moreover, even if someone could break Xing Tian's physical body, why would he help Xing Tian surpass his limit and not completely destroy him? One had to know that the shaman tribe had a bunch of enemies in the primordial world. They would definitely not be willing to see the shaman tribe have another supreme expert. Why don't I find ancestral shaman Hutu or ancestral shaman Xian Ming to try? After finding the method from the ghost emperor of Fengdu, Xing Tian's first thought was to find ancestral shaman Hutu or ancestral shaman Xian Ming to help him break and rebuild. However, the moment this thought appeared in his mind, it was extinguished by the ghost emperor of Fengdu. Fellow Taoist Xing Tian, although goddess Hutu and ancestral shaman Xian Ming are strong, they are of the same race as you. Can you really stimulate your fighting spirit and fight to the death with them? Looking at Xing Tian, who was eager to try, the ghost emperor of Fengdu could not help but pour cold water on him. Breaking the physical body was only secondary. The important thing was how to surpass one's limits in a battle and see the path of the great Tao. Live through death and see the true self. If he wanted to do this, he could only cut off all the fetters and fight to the death with the determination to have a glimmer of hope. If Xing Tian chose to fight with the two ancestral shamans, then, with their relationship, both sides would definitely have some scruples in their hearts and would not be able to fight with all their strength. In this way, it would violate Xing Tian's original intention. Therefore, he could not take it. Fellow Taoist is right. In a battle with the ancestral shamans, whether it is me or the two ancestral shamans, we can't completely let go and fight to the death. After hearing Fengdu Ghost Emperor's words, Xing Tian thought that this was the case. Both sides were so close, so how could they kill each other? But apart from the ancestral sorcerer, where could he find someone who could help him break through his limits? While feeling depressed, Xing Tianxia subconsciously looked at the Fengdu Ghost the Arch. When he looked, Xing Tian couldn't help but feel enlightened. Right now, wasn't there one? With this thought in mind, Xing Tian did the same. He took a step forward, bowed to the Fengdu Ghost Emperor and said, "Please lend me a hand, Taoist brother." In Xing Tian's opinion, Fengdu Ghost Emperor's strength must be unfathomable for him to be able to suppress everyone and sit on the throne of the Netherworld Realm's master. With his ability, perhaps it could help him break through his limits. Good fellow. Seeing Xing Tian's actions, Fengdu Ghost Emperor exclaimed in his heart, "What a guy!" Xing Tian's mind was really fast. He actually wanted him to make a move. It had to be said that this was a good idea. With his strength, he could indeed help Xing Tian break through the limit. Unfortunately, Xing Tian's matter was related to Feng Zichen's future plan. Therefore, Fengdu Ghost Emperor did not intend to help him. Thus, Fengdu Ghost Emperor said to Xing Tian, "Fellow Taoist Xing Tian, it's not that poor Wei doesn't want to help you. It's that poor Wei can't help you." Back then, when the Netherworld was first formed, in order to stabilize this land, the ancestral sorcerers elected Poor Wei as the Lord of the Netherworld. Poor Wei is grateful for the kindness of the ancestral sorcerers and specially made an oath that she would never hurt the sorcerer clan for no reason. Therefore, I hope that Poor Wei can't agree to your request. Perhaps the Fengdu Ghost Emperor's words could only be said to be half true and half false, but he absolutely could not take action to suppress Xing Tian. That was because the sorcerer clan had the most power in the Netherworld. If Xing Tian really died at his hands, then no matter what the reason was, the entire sorcerer clan would definitely hate him. TSK, TSK, TSK. If this was not handled well, his position as the Lord of the Netherworld would come to an end. Think about it, if a person in power was hated by the most powerful force under him, could his orders really be completely carried out? It would probably not be long before he would be overthrown. Therefore, no matter what, Xing Tian could not die at the hands of Fengdu Ghost Emperor. Xing Tian was reckless and didn't consider fellow Taoists' difficulties. Xing Tian was not a fool. With a slight hint from Fengdu Ghost Emperor, he figured out the reason and hurriedly apologized to Fengdu Ghost Emperor. It's good that fellow Taoist doesn't blame Poor Wei for refusing. Fengdu Ghost Emperor waved his hand and said, "Sai, the ancestral sorcerer can't help, and fellow Taoist can't help either. Then, the only one left is fellow Taoist Mingi. I just don't know if he can help." Xing Tian sighed in disappointment and said with some emotion, "Hiss." Hearing this, Fengdu Ghost Emperor could not help but feel a toothache. Xing Tian had a wide range of friends. He even knew an ice block like Patriarch Mingi. However, he could not help. Cough, cough. Fellow Taoist Xing Tian, don't forget that the Azura tribe is also in the Netherworld. After coughing a few times, Fengdu Ghost Emperor reminded him, if Patriarch Mingi really killed Xing Tian, the Azura tribe and the Sorcerer tribe would definitely fight. That's true. After Fengdu Ghost Emperor's reminder, Xing Tian could not help but feel distressed. He could not help this one. He could not help that one either. In short, the great divine abilities that he was familiar with could not help. Then, he could not provoke the famous great divine abilities of the primordial world for no reason and let them fight with him. My head hurts. Xing Tian could not help but complain softly in his heart. Fellow Taoist Xing Tian, don't worry. Have you forgotten human Emperor Shenyuan? The enmity of Qiyu is still in front of you. You have to take revenge. At this moment, Fengdu Ghost Emperor felt that the time was right, so he spoke up. That's right. How could I forget Shenyuan? Hearing this, Xing Tian's eyes lit up. He felt that all his frustrations had disappeared in an instant. This guy was good. With a connate cardinal treasure in his hand and a half-step primordial chaos great divine ability, wasn't he the best whetstone? Moreover, there was still a grudge between the two sides. It was completely reasonable to attack him. However, while he was happy, Xing Tian could not help but frown again. The human race and the sorcerer tribe were allies. If he attacked the human emperor, regardless of whether he won or lost, it would cause irreparable damage to the relationship between the two races. Then, did he really have to do that? For a moment, Xing Tian hesitated. Fellow Taoist, are you worried that if you attack Shenyuan, it will affect the relationship between the human race and the sorcerer tribe? Fengdu Ghost Emperor seemed to have seen the hesitation in Xing Tian's heart, so he asked. That's right. Xing Tian nodded and said, there was nothing to hide about this. In that case, then, fellow Taoist, you should go. Shaking his head, Fengdu Ghost Emperor smiled. What? Hearing this, Xing Tian, who thought that he would hear some wise advice, could not help but be shocked. Brother Fengdu, was he trying to sow discord between the human race and the sorcerer tribe? It was not Xing Tian's fault for thinking too much. The words of Fengdu Ghost Emperor were too easy to misunderstand. Fellow Taoist, poor Wei, let me ask you, what are your intentions for going to the human race this time? Ignoring Xing Tian's complicated emotions, Fengdu Ghost Emperor asked him directly. To use Xuanyuan's hand to break the limit, Xing Tian replied. Then, do you have the confidence to win? Fengdu Ghost Emperor continued to ask. Yes. When he said the word yes, Xing Tian's tone was unusually firm. It was obvious that he was confident. According to what you said, you are going to break through the realm, not to destroy the relationship between the two races. In that case, why are you hesitating? After the battle with human Emperor Shenyuan, if you successfully break the limit, you will be able to reach a higher realm. At that time, who will think that you are here to kill the human emperor? All living beings will think that you are here to achieve the Tao. Shenyuan has not fallen, and you have not fallen, and you have even advanced further with the help of this. Under such circumstances, how can the friendship between the two races be damaged? The truth is exactly the opposite. If such a situation really happens, not only will the friendship between the two races not be affected, but it will also become closer. But under such circumstances, Xing Tian, you are hesitating. Does this mean that you, Xing Tian, don't have the confidence to win as you said? At the end of his words, Fengdu Ghost Emperor's tone became more and more severe. It was like a heavy hammer, hammering Xing Tian's heart word by word. Thank you for your advice, brother Taoist. Xing Tian understands. Fengdu Ghost Emperor's words were like a bolt from the blue. They resounded in Xing Tian's mind and completely extinguished all his hesitation. Yes. As long as he successfully broke his limit in the battle with Shenyuan and was not killed by him, or he did not kill Shenyuan, then the two of them would be friends based on martial arts. Since that was the case, the relationship between the two races would not be damaged because of this. On the contrary, this was proof of their close relationship. After thinking through this point, Xing Tian could not help but be enlightened. There was no longer a trace of hesitation in his heart. Endless fighting spirit emerged and completely filled his entire heart. Then, he bowed respectfully to the Ghost Emperor of Fengdu and said, "Thank you. Xing Tian will definitely return successfully in this battle." After saying that, Xing Tian turned and left the imperial palace, rushing towards the human race. Xing Tian, have you really made up your mind? You have to know, your next action concerns the future relationship between the human race and the sorcerer race, and also the future safety of the untainted land. So, you can only succeed this time. You are not allowed to fail. Otherwise, there will be a long war between the human race and the sorcerer race, which will affect the entire untainted land. The untainted land will change because of you, and billions of people will die because of you. And you, Xing Tian, will be the fuse of everything. You will become the sinner of the sorcerer race, and even the entire untainted land. In the face of such consequences, I wonder if you, Xing Tian, can really maintain the belief that you will definitely win? On the emperor's throne, Fengdu Ghost Emperor's deep voice came slowly. It was like a heavy hammer that fell on Xing Tian's heart, bringing him heavy pressure. In a trance, the scene of the great battle between the human race and the sorcerer race seemed to appear in front of Xing Tian's eyes. Endless magical powers were unleashed, mountains and rivers were shattered, and countless people died tragically. The wails and cries kept echoing in his ears. It was like crying and complaining, as if it was accusing him. It was because of his actions that countless tragedies happened in the human world. For a moment, Xing Tian's body seemed to be pressed down by thousands of immortal divine mountains. His footsteps became extremely heavy. But even so, it could not shake Xing Tian's footsteps. Xing Tian will definitely succeed this time. I will definitely not let this result be reflected in reality. A shout came from Xing Tian's mouth, representing his incomparably firm belief. Then, a bright light rose from Xing Tian's body and enveloped him, piercing through all the illusions. That light was the most moving light. It was even more dazzling than the sun. It was so dazzling that people could not look directly at it. Even the powerful Fengdu Ghost Emperor, who was comparable to a primordial chaos expert, could not help but look sideways at it and marvel at its greatness. This was the light of faith. His appearance had nothing to do with strength. This was a realm of the soul. Only when one's Tao heart was pure to a certain extent could it be reflected. Under that unparalleled pressure, Xing Tian's fighting spirit did not weaken. Instead, it rose higher and higher. It was as if that huge pressure had brought him unparalleled motivation. The combination of his state of mind and fighting spirit made Xing Tian's belief become more and more firm. As a result, it underwent a transformation and gave birth to the light of faith. And this was the beginning of breaking the limit. The appearance of the light of faith marked the beginning of Xing Tian's transformation. Once his transformation was completed, he would be the new primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian of the primordial world, an existence like a Tao Lord. The battle with Shenyuan was the opportunity for him to transform. This battle, Xing Tian would complete a gorgeous transformation. He believed that after a period of time, the primordial world would once again give birth to an existence that would shock the future. Is this really okay? With such a huge pressure on his shoulders, can Xing Tian really successfully break the limit and complete the transformation? Not long after Xing Tian left, the Lady of Earth walked out of the dark and asked the Ghost Emperor of Fengdu worriedly. It turned out that from the beginning to the end, the Lady of Earth had been hiding in the dark and silently watching the development of the situation. That was true. It was related to Xing Tian, the number 1 magus below the ancestral magus. How could the Lady of Earth not come? Empress, there's no need to worry. Believe in Xing Tian. That pressure can suppress anyone, but it can't suppress Xing Tian. Instead, it will stimulate his fighting spirit and make him even stronger. Isn't the light of faith the best proof? Unlike the Lady of Earth's worries, the Ghost Emperor of Fengdu was full of confidence in Xing Tian. After all, he was the first man to be crowned as the god of war in the later generations. That's true. As the first great magus to be born and an existence that was favored by Pangu's axe, Xing Tian's potential is far beyond our imagination. He is not inferior to us ancestral magi at all. Looking at the axe in Xing Tian's hand, the Lady of Earth nodded thoughtfully. Chapter 630. Xing Tian. He was the most special existence in the wizard tribe. He was the first great wizard born from Pangu's heart, and the most powerful wizard besides the ancestral wizard. Of course, Xing Tian was special not because he was the first great wizard, but because of the Xingtian axe in his hand. Although the Xingtian axe was only an upper-grade primordial spiritual treasure, its killing power was not inferior to any supreme-grade primordial spiritual treasure. Even the physical body of a primordial chaos expert could be broken open by him. And all of this was because the Xingtian axe was formed from part of the fragments of Pangu's axe. Back then, the ultimate treasure of the chaos, Pangu's axe, was shattered because it couldn't withstand the backlash of the world. Its main body evolved into the 3 ultimate treasures of the world, while the remaining fragments were scattered in the untainted world and evolved into various special Khanate spiritual treasures. And the Xingtian axe was the most powerful of these primordial spiritual treasures. Back then, Xingtian was born with the axe which shocked the 12 ancestral wizards. Being born with the fragments of Pangu's axe was a treatment that even Pangu's son, the ancestral wizard, had never enjoyed. In a sense, Xingtian was someone who had obtained Pangu's approval. His future was destined to be brilliant. Because of this, Xingtian's status in the wizard tribe was somewhat aloof, second only to the 12 ancestral wizards. After all, in the world, those who could be recognized by Pangu, how many? Xingtian had such an honor, which showed that he was extraordinary. Thinking of this, Hudu's confidence in Xingtian increased greatly. She was sure that he would break the limit, surpass the past, and step into a new realm. Thinking that the wizard tribe would soon have a great existence at the level of the primordial chaos pathmaster, even with her cultivation, Hutu could not help but feel happy. Taoist Zichen. Under your stimulation, Xingtian's state of mind has changed, and his strength has far surpassed the past. Under such circumstances, with Xuanyuan's strength, is there any hope of forcing Xingtian to his limit? In addition to being happy, Hutu could not help but feel a little worried. The current Xingtian's strength had already reached its peak. Even compared to the grand shaman of the past, he was not inferior. Xuanyuan, on the other hand, had cultivated for less than 1,000,000 years. His half-step primordial chaos strength had been forcefully promoted by the human race's providence. In terms of comprehension of heaven and earth, battle experience, mastery of divine abilities, and so on, he was far inferior to Xingtian. Compared to Xingtian, Xuanyuan's only advantage was the Xuanyuan sword in his hand. However, the heaven-punishing axe, it might not be inferior to the current Xuanyuan sword. The gap between the two sides was so huge that Goddess Hutu couldn't help but worry. Could Xuanyuan really fight against Xingtian? If Xuanyuan was no match for Xingtian and couldn't push him to his limits, then all his previous efforts would have been in vain. Therefore, the Lady of Earth couldn't help but worry. Ha! Let's see if Xuanyuan can force Xingtian to his limits. After a few laughs, the Ghost Emperor of Fengdu said leisurely, how could there be such a huge loophole in his plan? After all, Xuanyuan was not alone. He had the entire human race behind him. He was the enemy of Xuanyuan. He was the enemy of the entire human race. Not to mention that Xingtian's current strength was only comparable to the ancestral shaman of the past. Even if Dijiang was reborn, he might not be able to defeat the entire human race. The current human race was no longer the human race of the ancient times that was at the mercy of the demon race. After the efforts of the ancestors of the human race was already worthy of being the untainted world's overlord. On the shore of the East Sea, Xingtian held a giant axe in his hand and charged over with hatred. He wanted to chop down human Emperor Xuanyuan with his axe. Human Emperor Xuanyuan was not afraid of this. Even if it was Xingtian, who had been famous for a long time in the ancient times, he still dared to raise his sword and face it. Rumble! Boundless sword intent bloomed from the Xuanyuan sword. It was vast and majestic, covering the entire void and forcefully repelling the Xingtian axe that was chopping down. Xingtian, you're too presumptuous. Chio's death was his own fault. How can you blame him? Moreover, how to deal with Chiyu is an internal matter of the human race. What does it have to do with you? Xingtian, retreat quickly. Considering the friendship between the human race and the witch race, I won't argue with you about this matter. You'd better retreat quickly. Don't make a mistake and hurt the friendship between the two races. Rising into the sky, Xuanyuan shouted at Xingtian. Even at this point, Xuanyuan still didn't want to attack Xingtian because of the friendship between the witch race and the human race. Therefore, he advised him to retreat. Unfortunately, although Xuanyuan's intention was good, Xingtian, who had come to cause trouble, didn't care about his explanation. In fact, no matter what Xuanyuan said, Xingtian would attack. The so-called revenge of Chiyu was just an excuse to attack Xuanyuan. Others didn't know, but how could he not know the real situation of Chiyu? He, what a stubborn guy. Let me see if your body is as stubborn as your mouth. As he spoke, Xing Tian waved the Xing Tian axe in his hand again and chopped towards Xuanyuan. But this time, perhaps Xuanyuan's words had some effect. Xing Tian chose to fight in the depths of the void instead of the ancestral land of the human race. In this way, the aftermath of the battle wouldn't affect the ancestral land of the human race. Boom! 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 As soon as the two of them fought, a terrifying wave erupted, almost destroying everything and shaking the long river of time. Almost at the moment the battle began, the mighty figures and great magicians of the entire untainted land sensed the terrifying battle that had erupted in the depths of the void. Therefore, they released their divine thoughts in surprise and bewilderment, peeping into the depths of the void. They wanted to see which two powerful existences had broken out in a great battle. Then, everyone saw a scene that they couldn't believe. Human Emperor Xuanyuan and Great Witch Xing Tian. They were fighting, and, looking at their posture, it didn't seem like they were sparring, but rather, it seemed like they were fighting to the death. This was interesting. The witch race and the human race had always been close allies. Now, the leaders of the two races suddenly fought in the depths of the void, fighting to the death. Did this mean that the relationship between the witch race and the human race was on the verge of collapse? What they saw, everyone couldn't help but think so. They just didn't know why the two races suddenly fell out with each other. However, although they were curious, it didn't affect their mood to watch a good show. The human race was the new overlord of the untainted land. The witch race was the old overlord of the untainted land. The leaders of the two races fought. It represented the confrontation between the old and new overlords of the untainted land. It was rare to see such a scene. Moreover, apart from the identities of the two sides, just the two half-step primordial chaos experts fighting to the death was worth watching. Watching the experts fight was also an opportunity for everyone. Could be of great help. One side was the undisputed overlord of the untainted land, and the other side was a great magician who had shaken the untainted land in the ancient times. The battle between the two could be said to have attracted everyone's anticipation. No matter why Xuanyuan and Xing Tian fought, the experts of the myriad races were extremely excited. If one had to say who was the happiest about the break between the human race and the witch race, it would be the experts of the myriad races. Xuanyuan forced them to leave the untainted land, forcing them to a dead end. As a result, the experts of the myriad races had the intention to rebel and make Xuanyuan pay the price. If Xing Tian hadn't taken action first, the experts of the myriad races would have joined forces to attack Xuanyuan. Of course, it was also because of Xing Tian's action that the experts of the myriad races changed their minds. They didn't act rashly and waited for the situation to develop. They knew how powerful Xing Tian was. If he took action, Xuanyuan might not be his match. He might be killed by Xing Tian. In this way, wouldn't everyone be happy? Xuanyuan had fallen, so who would take his orders to heart? If Xing Tian lost and was killed by Xuanyuan, wouldn't that be even better? Xing Tian still had the two great gods behind him, ancestral witch Xian Ming and Saint Hutu. Seeing that Xing Tian was killed by Xuanyuan, how could they not take revenge? When that time came, Xuanyuan should be worried about how to resist the revenge of the two great gods, instead of focusing on how to force them out of the untainted land. Clang! After a crisp sound, the Xuanyuan sword and the Xingtian axe collided fiercely. In an instant, a terrifying power erupted and swept through everything. The depths of the void were stirred up into a mess, and the void turbulence was everywhere. Bang! After the attack, Xuanyuan only felt a strong force surging from the Xuanyuan sword. First, it cracked his thumb and index finger, and then it fiercely split him apart, crashing into the void turbulence. Huff! Huff! After a long while, Xuanyuan crawled out of the void turbulence, breathing heavily. Under this attack, although he didn't suffer any injuries, his posture was a little embarrassing. In terms of realm, with the blessing of the human race, Xuanyuan wasn't necessarily weaker than Xing Tian, and even faintly surpassed him. However, as everyone knew, the most powerful thing about the witch race was their physical bodies, not their magic power or realm. Xing Tian's physical body had been tempered for countless years. One could imagine how powerful it was. In the entire untainted land, there weren't many people whose physical bodies were stronger than his. What about Shen Yuan? The fate of the human race could only improve his cultivation realm and bring him endless magic power. As for his physical body, the fate of the human race couldn't do anything. He needed to temper it himself. Then, without a doubt, Xuanyuan's physical body was tempered by himself. It definitely couldn't compare to Xing Tian's physical body. Therefore, in the battle just now, the huge gap between their physical bodies was directly reflected. Xing Tian's strength was far greater than Xuanyuan's, which was why he was sent flying with one blow. Similarly, this also made Shen Yuan understand, if he fought with Xing Tian in close combat, he would definitely lose. Ha ha! The so-called human emperor, the strongest person in the untainted land. Is this all you've got? Seeing that Shen Yuan was repelled by his attack, Xing Tian couldn't help but mock him. This human emperor was too useless. He couldn't even take one blow from him. How could he give him the pressure to break through his limits? Humph! Facing Xing Tian's ridicule, Shen Yuan snorted coldly and raised his sword again. However, this time he had fully learned his lesson from the last time. He didn't fight with Xing Tian in close combat. Instead, he chose to attack from a distance and compete with Xing Tian's magic power. Shen Yuan waved the Shen Yuan sword in his hand at Xing Tian from a long distance. Swish, 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 swish. In an instant, an infinite sword intent burst out. It was extremely sharp, as if it could cut through everything. It swept towards Xing Tian in an overwhelming manner. In terms of sword magic, the human race had received the true teachings of Feng Zichen. Every move and style of Shen Yuan contained a huge amount of power, which was compatible with the innate sword magic. The sword light surged over like the trajectory of the Great Path, which could cut through everything. It was extremely terrifying. Ha ha! Good! Now it's worth watching. Although the sword light was strong, Xing Tian was even fiercer. He raised the Xingtian axe in his hand and directly chopped at the sword light that was surging over. Compared to Xuanyuan's exquisite sword magic, Xing Tian's movements were a little simple. However, the Great Path was simple. Although Xing Tian's movements were simple, they all exerted his strength to the extreme. Xing Tian's axe chopped down, and what erupted was the purest physical strength, without a trace of impurities. Every strike was filled with the beauty of strength. As the saying goes, a strong person can defeat 10 skilled people. When one's strength was strong enough, there was nothing that he couldn't destroy. Therefore, Xing Tian's axe chopped down, and an infinite amount of power erupted, cutting the dazzling sword light into pieces on the spot. It turned into light spots that filled the sky and dissipated into thin air. What a strong physical body! In the distance, Shen Yuan, who saw this scene, couldn't help but twitch the corner of his eyes. With his eyesight, it wasn't difficult to see that Xing Tian didn't use any magic power in this attack. He only used the strength of his physical body. That was why it was so frightening. He was so strong without using magic power. If he used magic power, how strong would he be? Thinking of this, Shen Yuan didn't dare to hold back. He immediately urged the luck of the human race to increase his strength to the limit. Ha! After a deep roar, wisps of fire suddenly rose from Xuanyuan's body and shone with the brilliance of the human path. In an instant, Xuanyuan's entire body changed. The mighty power of the human path filled his body, distorting space and time, emitting an infinite majesty. He was stronger, was infinitely close to the primordial chaos Dalio Jinxian. Kill! Infinite power surged in his body, causing Xuanyuan's confidence to increase greatly. He raised his sword and charged towards Xing Tian again. Swish, swish, swish. Almost at the same time, countless sword lights that were even more vast and fierce than before bloomed from the Shen Yuan sword. They shot towards Xing Tian at an even faster speed. In an instant, the sword light had already arrived beside Xing Tian. so fast. Seeing the sword light coming towards him, Xing Tian was about to resist when he felt that the sword light had completely enveloped him. Dang 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 dang. The sound of iron being forged came from Xing Tian's body. It was the sound of the sword light slashing on Xing Tian's body. After a long while, the power of the sword light was finally exhausted and slowly dissipated into the void. At the same time, Xing Tian's figure was revealed. Miserable. At this moment, Xing Tian could only be described as miserable. His clothes had been completely shredded by the sword light. His entire body looked bloody, and there was not a single piece of good flesh on his body. It was as if he had been dismembered. Chapter 631. With the support of the human Dao light, the power of Xuanyuan's attack was raised to the limit, breaking Xing Tian's almost invincible body. But, even so, it was useless. Haha! Pain. I haven't felt it in a long time. Xing Tian was not angry that his body was broken. Instead, he became more and more excited. Because, under Xuanyuan's attack, he felt a pressure that he hadn't felt since the battle between the Lich and the demon. And the pressure was the driving force that forced him to improve. The battle has only just begun. Xing Tian muttered. Suddenly, boundless magic power surged from his body and wrapped around the sword wound. Then, a shocking change occurred. Wherever the dermic power passed, the remaining sword intent on Xing Tian's wound seemed to have suffered a huge blow and collapsed. His broken body was reborn as a result. In an instant, Xing Tian's injury was completely healed. There was no trace of injury at all. Only the torn clothes were still hanging on Xing Tian's body, as if to prove the existence of the battle just now. This is indestructible body. The supreme ability to be reborn from a drop of blood. In the void in the distance, Xuanyuan couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice when he saw the changes on Xing Tian's body. He was very familiar with this method. This was because it wasn't a supreme ability passed down by the Wu tribe, but a supreme ability that was naturally obtained when the path of gods and demons was cultivated to a very high level. When the path of gods and demons was cultivated to a very high level, the physical body would be integrated with the great path, so that part of the characteristics of the indestructible true spirit would be obtained. Even if the physical body was broken or destroyed, as long as there was a trace of blood left, the physical body could be reformed. The reason why Xuanyuan was familiar with this ability was that the two emperors before him, Fuxi and Xinnong, could easily do this. In other words, the physical body was attached to the great path to achieve the state of immortality. That was the ability of the path of gods and demons to cultivate to the realm of the primordial Daluo Jingxian and prove the true body of the Pangu. This was the symbol of the path of gods and demons. It was because of this that Xuanyuan was surprised at this moment. Although Xing Tian's current strength was infinitely close to that of the primordial Daluo Jingxian, no matter how close he wasn't the primordial Daluo Jingxian. He was always a hair's breadth. Therefore, logically speaking, Xing Tian shouldn't be able to do this. In fact, only Dijiang had truly relied on his own strength to reach this step and cultivate into the fiend god Dao Lord realm. Even Feng Zhi couldn't do this without the help of external help. Therefore, it was obvious how difficult it was to do this. If Feng Zichen, the founder of the fiend god Dao, couldn't do it, how could Xing Tian do it? Could it be that his achievements in the path of gods and demons were greater than Binfeng Zichen, the founder? Xing was Dijiang, Dijiang god divinity, Dijiang. Dijiang Ti Dijiang. That's not right. If Xing Tian could do this without paying a price, he would have become the primordial Daluo Jingxian long ago. How could he be trapped in the half-step primordial chaos realm like he is now? Xuanyuan felt that Xing Tian's method of repairing his body must have some flaws, and it wasn't without a price. Otherwise, if there were no restrictions, he would have become a Dao long ago. This method was really the same as that of the primordial Daluo Jingxian. Kill. Thinking of this, Xuanyuan waved the Xuanyuan sword in his hand and activated a dazzling sword light that charged towards Xing Tian from afar. He wanted to injure Xing Tian's body again so that when he repaired his body, He could see the flaw of this method or the price he had to pay when using this method. The sword light was dazzling and powerful. It arrived in front of Xing Tian at a speed that surpassed time and space. However, it was this incomparably powerful sword that did not work. He was blocked by Xing Tian. It was the same move in a situation where they were on guard. How could Xing Tian be hit a second time? Just now, it was Xuanyuan's sudden outburst that caught Xing Tian off guard. He was slashed by the sword light and his body was injured. Now that Xing Tian was on guard, if he was hit by Xuanyuan again, he would really become a joke. Rumble! Xing Tian shook the Xingtian axe in his hand, and an extremely terrifying force, accompanied by strands of innate baleful aura, surged out from the axe and rushed straight towards the sword light. In the blink of an eye, it was completely drowned and swallowed. Kill! After shattering the sword light, there was no joy on Xing Tian's face. Instead, he became more and more manic. He raised the axe in his hand and pounced towards Xuanyuan. It had always been him, Xing Tian, who suppressed others. When had it been others' turn to suppress him? It was simply unbearable. Humph! Seeing Xing Tian charging towards him, Xuanyuan released sword chi to block his footsteps while retreating quickly, widening the distance between him and Xing Tian. He still remembered, he still had a chance to win in a long-range battle. He would definitely lose in a close-range battle. No matter how strong Xing Tian was, he was still in the depths of the void. He couldn't stand on the ground, so he couldn't obtain a steady stream of power from it. His power had a limit after all. But Xuanyuan was different. With the blessing of the human race, his power was truly endless. In a long-range battle of attrition, Xing Tian really couldn't outlast him. Oh! One side wanted to fight in close range, while the other side wanted to fight in a long-range battle. The two sides chased each other and pulled each other in the depths of the void. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. In other words, the two sides had been fighting for 1,000 years. And after 1,000 years, the gap between the two sides had also been revealed. It could be seen that when the two sides fought, Xing Tian could no longer wield the giant axe in his hand as smoothly as before. He was tired. After 1,000 years of high-intensity battle, even with Xing Tian's strength, he couldn't hold on any longer. Every time he waved the Xingtian axe, he felt that his arms were extremely heavy, and he needed to spend more energy. Xing Tian's mana was about to run out. At this point in the battle, the reason why Xing Tian was still able to hold on was because of his unwavering faith. As long as his faith didn't fall, Xing Tian wouldn't fall. And Xuanyuan? His situation was the opposite of Xing Tian's. After 1,000 years of battle, not only was Xuanyuan not tired, but he was even more energetic. Moreover, his moves were more natural than before. His mastery of magic had also increased by a large margin. Obviously, after 1,000 years of battle, Xuanyuan's strength had improved greatly. That's right. Anyone who was fed moves by an existence of the same realm for 1,000 years would improve greatly. Over the past 1,000 years, Xuanyuan obviously hadn't been in vain. Under the pressure of Xing Tian, he had a more perfect grasp of his own strength. He was already able to perfectly control the huge strength that the human race's fortune had blessed him. In the past, with the blessing of the human race's fortune, although Xuanyuan had strength that was not inferior to the half-step primordial chaos realm. But his own realm had only just touched the level of sage to be. With a weak body, he could control strength that was far beyond his own. It would be strange if Xuanyuan could perfectly control it. In other words, although Xuanyuan had the strength of a half-step primordial chaos realm, he couldn't perfectly exert this strength because his level was too low. But now, with Xing Tian's help, everything was different. After 1,000 years of high-intensity training, Xuanyuan had adapted to his own strength and could perfectly control it. This also showed that the current Xuanyuan was a qualified half-step primordial chaos realm master. After perfectly exerting his own strength, Xuanyuan's strength increased greatly. Although he still couldn't defeat Xing Tian in close combat, Xing Tian gradually lost to him in long-range combat. Boom! 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 Because of his limitless power, every strike of Xuanyuan's was an all-out strike. What about Xing Tian? In order to resist Xuanyuan's attack, he had to use all his strength. But he didn't have Xuanyuan's endless strength. Therefore, every time he attacked with his full strength, it was a huge burden for Xing Tian. With such a high-intensity battle, Xing Tian gradually became unable to withstand it. This was the reason why Xing Tian gradually lost to Shenyuan after 1,000 years of battle. It wasn't that Xing Tian was inferior to Shenyuan. Shenyuan was really cheating. Of course, if Xing Tian was willing to draw upon the blessing of the witch race, he could also reach Xuanyuan's level. But that would violate his original intention of pushing himself to the limit. Therefore, Xing Tian didn't do it. Whoosh! Just as Xing Tian's strength was gradually weakening, Shenyuan seized the opportunity and slashed down with his sword. A huge wound was cut in Xing Tian's chest, almost cutting Xing Tian's body diagonally in half. Puchi! Dazzling divine blood sprayed out from Xing Tian's chest like a fountain, and it emanated intense fluctuations of divinity that dyed the sky red. Damn it! Enduring the pain in his chest, Xing Tian first knocked away Xuanyuan's sword with his axe, then opened his mouth and sucked hard in front of him. Suddenly, the divine blood spurting out from Xing Tian's chest stopped abruptly. Then, as if time was flowing backward, it flowed back into Xing Tian's body from the void. Whoosh! A divine light flashed, and the injuries on Xing Tian's body completely disappeared, as if he had never been injured. Of course, there was a price to pay for such a fast recovery. After the injuries disappeared, Xing Tian's aura was undoubtedly much weaker than before. Seeing this scene in the distance, Xuanyuan's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have noticed something, but he wasn't sure. Therefore, he continued to control Xuanyuan's sword to attack Xing Tian, to bring more injuries to Xing Tian so that he could confirm his guess. Xing Tian's spiritual power was gradually depleted. His movements were no longer as smooth as before, so Shenyuan was able to find many flaws. Puff! Not long after, Shenyuan seized the opportunity and injured Xing Tian again. Xuanyuan's sword came slashing down, almost cutting Xing Tian in half. After forcing Xuanyuan's sword away with his axe, Xing Tian continued to use magic to repair his body. However, compared to before, the time he spent repairing his physical body this time was much longer than the previous time. Seeing this, Shenyuan was finally certain that the price Xing Tian had to pay to repair his physical body was his mana and origin. Every time he repaired his body, Xing Tian would consume a large amount of spiritual power and a small part of his origin. If he was at his peak, the spiritual power and origin needed to repair his body would be nothing to him. But at this moment, Xing Tian's spiritual power was almost depleted. It wouldn't be as easy to repair his body as before, unless he was willing to consume his origin. But while spiritual power was easy to obtain, origin was difficult to obtain. If one's spiritual power was depleted, they could cultivate it back at any time. But if one's origin was depleted, it would really be gone. The price was too great. This was the difference between Xing Tian and the Celestial Demon Pathmaster. The Tao of the Celestial Demon Pathmaster was imprinted in heaven and earth. If his body was destroyed, the Tao imprinted in heaven and earth would spontaneously absorb the power of heaven and earth to reform his body. This was the true definition of being immortal and indestructible. It wouldn't consume his origin or spiritual power. To kill such a person other than committing suicide like Dijiang, the only other way was to suppress him and refine him over a long period of time. The less spiritual power, the greater Xing Tian's flaws, and the more times he was slashed by the Shenyuan sword. In the process of recovering his physical body, Xing Tian's dermic powers were quickly depleted. But even without spiritual power, Xing Tian's body was still powerful, far from what Shenyuan could contend with. Therefore, Shenyuan didn't let down his guard just because Xing Tian's spiritual power was depleted. He still chose to continue attacking from afar. Swish, 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 the Shenyuan sword slashed down quickly, leaving huge wounds on Xing Tian's body, cutting him into a bloody mess. But Xing Tian was still too strong. Every time the Shenyuan sword left, divine light would rise from his body and repair his body. That was the power of origin. Xing Tian, who had lost his spiritual power, chose to repair his body with his origin. Of course, this wasn't Xing Tian's original intention. It was a spontaneous action after his body was injured. His body didn't have intelligence, so he couldn't tell the difference between spiritual power and origin. He only knew that after being injured, he had to repair his body as soon as possible. If he had spiritual power, he would use spiritual power. If he didn't, he would use origin. Anyway, as long as he could use it, he would use it. And Xing Tian couldn't stop the actions of his body, because this was the price he had to pay to cultivate an indestructible body. Or rather, this was the side effect of an indestructible body. He hadn't reached the realm of a divine demon Tao Lord, but he had some of the characteristics of a divine demon Tao Lord. Of course, he had to pay a price. And the predicament Xing Tian was facing now was the price he had to pay. In the blink of an eye, another 1,000 years had passed. Shen Yuan had also slashed Xing Tian for 1,000 years. However, other than Xing Tian's aura becoming more dispirited, there weren't many changes. Because Xing Tian's origin was too dense. That's right. If a half-step primordial chaos expert was so easy to kill, then he wouldn't be worthy of being called the peak of the world. After slashing Xing Tian for 1,000 years, Shen Yuan couldn't help but feel a little tired. Therefore, he tried to persuade him to surrender. Xing Tian, will you surrender? Even now, Shen Yuan wasn't willing to kill Xing Tian. You're tuning in to the Legend of the Vagabond YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.